Go ahead.
Inside the Birds is back. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Inside the Birds Pregame Live. We are here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave in Philadelphia. It's where Philly loves a winner. I am Jeff Mosher from Inside the Birds, alongside my Inside the Birds co-host Adam Kaplan. Back with us, as usual, we got our tape breakdown guru right there. His name is Greg Cosell. What's up, Greg?
Jeff, good to be here.
Good to have you here this week. And
what do you mean by that?
You know, we got our slot receiver guru right there with us, former Philadelphia Eagle wide receiver Jason Avant. What's up, Jay?
What's up, Jeff? How you doing? How's everyone doing?
We were good with the time, right? 10 a.m. We were all good.
Good. We're good. I'm always sprinting in. I got this uncanny ability of trying to wait till the last minute.
But you got it. Now, did Andy Reid, by the way, to have a rule about like Tom Coughlin being 5 minutes early?
No, he didn't have that rule.
Right.
He didn't have that rule.
Thank God. That was.
And plus, I always live on the edge. There's something about it. I think I love adrenaline like too much.
All right.
I like getting there. Like
I'm always early.
You're a wide. You get open late. That's how it is,
well,
right? No, I'm just messing with you. Before we get started, we want to wish a special happy birthday to James Hyden of Public Square Media, one of our producers today. You can't see him, but he's here. He's running the show. He's the traffic cop alongside Zach from Rebel Hill Productions.
Rebel Hill.
Again, happy birthday to our buddy Jimmy Hyden, and he's doing a great job. Everybody, if you leave a comment in the YouTube box, just tell him happy birthday and tell him what a great job that those guys are doing. We're here at Jack's Bar and Grill, as we are all the time. We're going to break down this very interesting matchup today between the 3-5 Philadelphia Eagles against the 4-3 Los Angeles Chargers. It's a Week 9 game. It's the first home game for the Eagles, right, since the Kansas City game, Week 4. Is that no, I'm sorry, it's a Tampa Bay game. So they come home after the big win.
But during the day?
During the
This
day.
is a day game, yeah.
Right, first day game.
Yeah.
So the last game was a night game against Tampa Bay, I believe. So
Right.
Interesting stuff there. Meanwhile, the Chargers, they were 4-1. They're off to a hot start, and then all of a sudden they dropped 2 straight against the Ravens, and then last week they lose to the Patriots. Here's something I didn't even realize until doing this. The Eagles are 0-3 at home this year. Jason, the Eagles 0-3 at the Link, and if you go back to last year, they're on a 4-game losing streak and just 3-7-1 at home since the start of last year. That's just not acceptable.
it isn't. We got to do a lot better job at home. Come out prepared. I think a lot of times the players expect the crowd to kind of, guide them to the win type of thing. They got to come out with the same urgency as they have on the road.
Yeah, definitely. It's just hard to, for as long as I've been in here and Adam, I mean, the Link used to be a place, going back to the Vet. Well, the Vet people used to fear because it was the Vet, not because of the crowd per se, but although the 700 level was there, but, the stadium, the field, but the Link used to have, there was a great home court advantage here, home field advantage, and it's seemingly gone away. But Greg, you know this. I mean, you're only as good at home as your talent is and how good you are of a football team.
Eventually works out that way.
It's amazing how that happens, right?
Eventually.
No, but when your team is fair to good, you get that advantage.
Right.
Here, yeah, like week 2, right? They had the great win against Atlanta in Atlanta, bombed Atlanta. I mean, they were dominant, and they come home, and once they got down and once they were not moving the ball well, the crowd is not behind them like they normally would be. So that's the thing is you want to get the crowd into it by starting fast.
Right.
And the opportunity will be here, and we'll get into why later today.
Yeah, the Eagles certainly have a big opportunity here to, have their first 2-game win streak. And this feels a little bit to me leading up to the game like week 2, San Francisco. They had gone out, they had beat Atlanta pretty handily on the road in the season opener. And I remember this, when we went to the Link that day, when I was there, I thought the crowd was as fired up and as pumped up as it's ever been for a non-conference Week 2 game. And I imagine coming off the drubbing that the Eagles administered against the Lions last week, coming back to the Link, that the crowd is really going to try to get into this game and get the home team going.
And it's a late start. Remember, it's a 4:05 start. We've got daylight savings, so we'll see if everybody's juiced up for the game. But you mentioned the Chargers, how good of a start they got off to. And remember, they did win earlier in the season on the road, changing 3 time zones. Now, the last time they did that was against Baltimore. They got smoked.
Right.
I'm interested to see how the Chargers come out because we'll get into their injury situation. And Greg and Jason could break down Justin Herbert. But the bottom line is there are a lot of good matchups for the Eagles today. And I think the quarterback, the head coach who calls the plays, they are on notice today. This is a game where there's a lot of opportunity to do well on offense.
It's also a game where the line has been up and down throughout the week. Very strange game. We will talk about that a little bit later, but there's been constant movement, and I wonder if that reflected the injuries or the momentum or whatever, where the money was going, but really interesting stuff. So like Adam said, it's 4 o'clock game time. You can still come here to Rivers Sportsbook and Casino, watch the 1 o'clock games, watch this show, then watch the 1 o'clock games, just have a good time. They've got great drink specials. We're here at Jack's Bar and Grill. They got other great restaurants. They have huge flat screen TVs, leather recliners, easy places to make your bets and wagers. So come on down. It is football watching heaven, and enjoy yourself before the 4 o'clock kickoff today at the link. And again, leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube in the box, or a question. We got it all set up so we can read it, and I can try to answer, or anybody on the panel can try to answer a question that you might have. All right, let's start this breaking show with sort of some breaking news out of Chargers camp. Adam, it seems like we already knew that going into the game they were roughed up a little bit at cornerback, but there's been kind of some late injury news there with another.
Yes, so 2 out of their top 3 corners are out today. Michael Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. Then Tavon Campbell, their 4th corner, he unfortunately, we're told, got hurt in Friday's practice, so they added him to the injury report yesterday. However, we're told as of this hour that he probably will be able to play. He's got a groin injury now. But again, he's the 4th corner. He doesn't play very much.
Right.
So this is what I was saying earlier. These matchups do favor the Eagles. The Chargers also are one of the worst teams against tight ends. We'll get into that a little bit later. So this is a situation, just like in Week 2 against the Niners, where the matchups favor them. But also, you can't get super pass happy. Just use your personnel the right way. Don't be throwing the ball 40 times. By the way, the Chargers aren't very good against the run, 5.1 yards per carry versus opposing running backs. Now, I know Brandon Staley bristled at that in his Monday press conference, saying they thought that they did better against the run this past game. But the bottom line is the numbers are very favorable for the Eagles to score. Weather's good. You don't have to worry about wind or throwing the football today. So I'm expecting some good matchups today. We'll see if the Eagles take advantage of it.
2 points, Mr. Kaplan.
Yes, please add.
Number one, Campbell has played a lot this year because Chris Harris was out for the first.
Earlier this season.
And Campbell was their slot corner, so he's played a lot of football for them this year. So he's not a guy that's, in a sense, coming off the street to play corner today. So he has played a lot of snaps. We can debate whether we think he's a good player, but he's been on the field quite a bit.
Right.
And I will say that I thought last week, and it's been a weakness through the season, but they clearly did play the run better last week.
And that's what Staley was talking about.
And we'll see. I mean, the run game of the Patriots, and this is where you have to get into specifics, the run game of the Patriots and the run game of the Eagles up to this point in the season have been 2 totally different animals.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the Eagles choose to play, and we can get further into that. I don't want to jump ahead in your script there, Mr. Mosier, but the Patriots line up and run the ball the way most people do in the NFL. They line up, they play too tight, they play with a fullback, they come at you with a strong physical run game. The Eagles did a little of that last week, kind of for the first time, but that's certainly not been their MO.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, I did hear, Jay, some, I guess maybe sarcastic comments from fans this week being upset that the Chargers were banged up at corner because they felt like that was going to be invitation for Nick Sirianni to throw the ball too much and not go back to the running style.
Well, it's just kind of, this week is, the Eagles have a lot of different avenue pathways in order to win this game offensively. 32nd against the rush with yards per carry. You guys alluded to that earlier. And also, you're going to be playing guys this week like K'Mon Hall, Tavon Campbell, who has played, but Ryan Smith, they tried to take him out as quick as possible. Yeah. And you're going to have an aging veteran out there, Chris Harris, 32 years old, who's clearly lost speed, starting at right corner or left corner to us. So there's some money to be made. Either you pass it or on the edges, or you run it. So, but I would say let's lean toward the run.
Yeah. Well, we will see. We'll get into that. Obviously, both teams have some injuries, but the Chargers seem to be the more injured team, and that's been the case for almost every Eagles opponent this year so far. The Eagles have had their fair share of injuries, but not in the cluster variety where last year it would be like 5 or 6 guys that you were talking about them missing in certain matchups.
Correct. So if you look at their matchups, Kenneth Murray, who would certainly help against the run, he started practicing this week. He was not activated on Saturday, so he can't play. Brian Brolaga, who's out with the groin surgery. Uday Abushi, who was a starting guard for them, he's out for the season towards ACL. So yeah, you're right. They've got some matchups here.
Right.
we're going to get into the right side of the Chargers offensive line, which is a major
critical
problem.
Yeah.
Major problem, which is why Jared Cook is not catching a lot of passes they're having inside the chip. So I'm looking forward to seeing how both play callers, Nick Sirianni on offense and Jonathan Gannon on defense, how they take advantage of these matchups.
All right, well, for the Eagles, the only player that is out today is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He was not play. I still believe it's a back injury that he is, or ankle. That's right. Yep. It was an ankle injury. Everyone else good to go. Jalen Reagor, Jordan Mailata, Jack Driscoll, Javon Hargrave. I mean, the list was long, and they welcome the return of Anthony Harris this week, which is big. He had the thumbs thing going on and a groin thing going on, but apparently he's all right to be able to play.
And Reagor, I do want to mention, so we're told on Monday he started rehabbing that ankle. Really worked his way back, and kudos to him because when he suffered the injury, it looked bad. But he had told people he was going to try to play, and he did, and kudos to him. He was able to practice late this week. So off of that, I love the way that they used him. You know, in the run game, using his speed. I like to see them expand the way that they use him going forward because this guy is super explosive with the ball in his hands, and also as a punt returner where he was dynamic at TCU. So I'm looking forward to see what they do with him today.
All right.
Anthony Harris coming back, you know, I would hate to see Marcus Epps leave the field. I thought he's played pretty well.
Played every snap last week.
So I thought that he's played pretty well, especially coming down. I think he's getting more comfortable at it. So I'm not too excited to see Anthony Harris back, just to be honest.
No, it's kind of it. No, listen, I think it's really fascinating. I mean, if you look at, and we'll get into it in a second, Eric Wilson and Anthony Harris were two of their quote-unquote bigger off-season free agent signings. I mean, one-year deals, but they both were supposed to come here with knowledge of the type of defense that Jonathan Gannon wanted to play. But it doesn't matter what you know. Eric Wilson just wasn't, from what I saw, not playing well at all, either as a run defender or in
obviously
coverage.
From what they saw, too.
Yes, obviously.
But,
and I agree with you. I thought Epps had a decent game last week, and he's a younger player. He's perhaps more groomable, and you wonder if Anthony just goes straight back into the role before, or if they do try to give Marcus Epps more time.
We'll see.
We'll get into that. With the Chargers, out today is running back Justin Jackson with a quadriceps, and of course, as we mentioned before, and this is unfortunate. I was kind of looking forward to seeing Asante Samuel Jr. play at the link like his father did, but he won't play, and neither will Michael Davis, which I don't know much about Mike Davis. He was a starting corner. Was he a good starting corner in this league?
Well, they played boundary and field corner, and he was their boundary corner. And he's played well this year. And he stayed there no matter what the formation was. For instance, when they beat the Chiefs week 3, when the Chiefs lined up in their staple 1-by-3 set where Kelsey was the single receiver to the boundary, Davis played him man-to-man.
Oh, wow.
And did a good job.
Okay.
So Davis was the boundary corner, Samuel was the field corner. So Davis has played well this year. He's a big loss for them.
Right.
We'll be interested to see if they stay with their boundary field concept in this game, given that their two starting corners are out.
It was a little bit it was convoluted last week. It was all over the place last week. It was hard for me to tell because I looked at the game previous. I was looking at it and he was field and boundary. But last game,
and they've done that all season. But now with new players, because if Campbell's going to go, from what you know,
what we're told is right now, unless something happens in
so Campbell will start and he will. My guess is, this would be my guess based on I think Campbell, because he's played boundary, he played some boundary last week. He played both kind of. That was
both
the
of
thing.
them,
So I don't know who'll be there if they'll do that, but that's what they've been doing all year. They've had a boundary and a field corner, not a left and a right.
Sure.
He was more to the field last week.
As we look at some of the Eagles transactions that they made this week, I wanted to particularly ask you guys what you knew, if anything, about Kerry Vincent Jr., the cornerback from the Broncos.
From LSU?
That the Eagles traded for.
I did not study him in detail at LSU, so I don't know a ton about it. The one thing I do know is he was supposed to be very gifted, but he had some issues that were problematic. So I don't know what those are.
Right.
But
that has been a trend of the team the last few years to take low draft picks or use low draft picks on guys who have quote-unquote upside, but maybe some kind of red flag in character and hope that they
There was a time when he was at LSU where he was supposed to be one of the next guys, because LSU puts out corners every year.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be one of those guys, but it never quite happened.
He's seen two things. As a smaller corner, just over 5'10". He's looking as a nickel corner. He opted out last season, and Greg is correct. There were some concerns with character. Nothing severe, nothing bad, like super bad off the field, but just enough where he would have, even if we would have played last year, that would have been a knock against him. But The Eagles liked him. They obviously liked his tape. But we were joking on our podcast earlier this week. What did the Eagles have, 6 nickel corners?
Yeah, it's the dart throwing technique. Obviously, you hope to hit on 1 or 2. You don't invest a ton of resources, but you hope in the low ones that you do, you may hit on 1 or 2. And that brings us really to one of their transactions. John Hightower is a guy they used a very low draft pick on last year. He played. Did not make the team this year, has been practice squad all year long and protected, and today he is elevated, I believe, for the first time.
So he's active today?
Yeah, he is active today, which we've been talking about.
He should be actually on the game day roster because they were down J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Now, I know people will laugh at that, but he is their blocking recrever.
Hightower is?
No. Hang on. No. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is their blocking receiver.
Yes.
So what will happen is Tyree Jackson should be active today. He was activated off injured reserve. They did have to Wednesday, but with the Arcega-Whiteside injury, who is a blocking receiver, they now could dress 3 tight ends instead of Richard Rodgers. That was the decision.
So what quarter do we see the gimmick throw by Tyree Jackson?
That's actually interesting.
Since he was a quarterback in college.
But, Greg, the reason why he's not playing quarterback anymore is major inaccuracy issues.
I know, I did him coming out.
Which I saw at the Senior Bowl. There was one when I was sitting there, and he threw it out of bounds, and I don't think that was what he tried to do.
No, I
but he's
evaluated him coming out of Buffalo.
Great story of development. He had a tremendous training camp. Had he not had that back fracture, he was going to make the team. And he's long. Now he's got to fill out physically, but he is over 6'6". He's an interesting player, and kudos to him to be willing to, like Logan Thomas did, to play tight end. But remember, Logan Thomas waited some years. He tried to play quarterback.
Right.
But when I talked to Tyree Jackson on Sirius XM NFL Radio, we had him on in the spring. He said he did talk to Thomas about that, the conversion to tight end.
Yeah, well, I mean, he certainly had a great training camp. It was fun to watch that. Jay, real quick, I wanted to get back to Hightower, because you have constantly, and you had the opportunity to coach him last year as an assistant wide receivers coach. And so even though people should know that, and if they don't, people think you're crazy when you have said on the Q&A show that you think John Hightower is one of the best route runners on the team because they weren't able to see that last year.
Is.
But you saw it in practice.
He is. Like, John Hightower has the knack of making people move out of their spot, the stuff that we talk about all the time. He can do that.
Right.
Does he catch the ball consistently? Does he get scared of contact? Ooh. He does that sometimes.
Exactly.
But as far as getting open on someone, he does that naturally, and it's something that he doesn't have to think about it. He automatically knows if this guy is 1 yard inside, I have to get him off his spot and leave him 2 yards outside by the end of this route.
Right.
And he understands that. Some people just know that.
Right.
Just like on defense, there are some guys that understand angles automatically.
Right.
They see where the guy's coming down, and they can get to that angle. Same way with receiver play. Some guys have it naturally, some guys have to learn. Jalen Rager still has to learn. I saw it last week a bunch, actually. Mm-hmm. But there's some things that he has to learn, and sometimes guys never learn. But you can't coach that. You can't coach a guy, right? The instincts of him.
Jason, speaking of what you just talked about with Hightower in terms of the contact and wanting to take contact, how do you get in a guy's head? Like, how do you teach that? Because
that's one thing that there's a fight or flight, like in everything, especially when it comes to football. Most of the time, NFL football players have seared that part of their brain that says move out of the way of contact. We've learned how to run straight through people and not think twice about it. And usually by this stage, guys have gotten rid of that. So when you see that, it's probably never going away.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's fascinating, the fact that we pointed this out on the podcast, that they've protected him every single week.
Yeah.
Because that meant they clearly saw something in, and yet the feedback Adam and I got last year, and then you even validated it on the Q&A show, is that he's a kid who has a lot of talent but has to be constantly coached up, constantly told to keep your eyes on the prize, constantly kind of reined in, to the point where you wonder if coaches get tired of having to do that all the time for a bottom roster guy. But the fact that they have, they must see something they think that they can get through to him.
Go ahead.
I did him coming out of Boise, and I thought he was a very interesting prospect. I know he wouldn't be a high draft choice because he's also very slight. But I thought, to Jason's point, and Jason certainly knows more about the nuances of route running than I do, but I thought that he actually was a pretty good route runner when I watched his Boise tape. Most people just saw him as a speed guy because he was long, lanky, and he can run. But I actually thought, watching his tape at Boise State, that he ran some really good routes where he worked the middle of the field. Now, in college football, it's different than the NFL. You don't see you don't see big hits like that in college football, like you do in the NFL. And plus, the field is so expanded in college because of the hash marks.
Yeah.
So I didn't know about what you said with maybe the concern about not getting hit,
Yeah.
which obviously in the NFL can be a concern. Then it'll limit you to certain kinds of routes.
Right. Yeah, to me, when you start getting guys, because those guys, when you were one of those bottom roster guys, you have a pretty good indicator how tough a guy is. If you start seeing those receivers on every special teams, you know that kid is mentally tough and prepared.
Sure.
Because now the special team coach finds value there, and he can go down there and compete. When you start seeing guys that are third, fourth, fifth receiver that doesn't play special teams, they're going to be out of the league. That tells you something. It tells you a bunch.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a great point. That's a great point.
The other thing on Hightower, Jeff, you and I had heard this in scouting, is that he doesn't always respond to hard coaching. I don't know, Jason, if you saw that, but that was something where some guys could handle it, some guys can't, and that might be another reason why he's not flourished as much as they would think. But as you said, it's certainly true. He clearly is doing well enough in practice as a practice squad player to keep protecting him.
Right. Yeah.
And here's an opportunity with Arcega-Whiteside out. And I know fifth receivers don't play very much, but he's a shot play guy. And the Chargers have issues at corner. We'll see what happens.
We will get into that. We will definitely get into that. Let's get into this game. There's no question that a change in philosophy led to a breakout for the Eagles last week against the Lions. They went to a more downhill running attack. We saw elements of it at first against the Raiders the week before, but that could not be sustainable with the way the game went. But against the Lions, 236 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground. It was, what's that?
42 rushes, wasn't it?
Yeah, 42 rushing attempts.
46 or 40,
whatever it was a lot.
Yeah.
It's funny, I always talk about the juxtaposition in that game. You know, Lions coach Matt Campbell was the guy who said he wanted his team, Dan Campbell, to kick people in the teeth and eat the kneecaps. It was the Eagles last week
46.
kicking people in the teeth and eating kneecaps as they rolled up, over 220 rushing yards. So, Adam, we've talked about for weeks now switching up the offense when it was too pass heavy, too RPO heavy, and trying something different. We saw it against the Raiders, and then all of a sudden, bam, against the Lions. That downhill, under center attack that we thought could be added to this offense.
The angles, when you have your quarterback under center, it's just different. The spacing is different, Greg. The angles are different. I love it. We've been calling for it every week. You can run a quarterback under center. You could have him in shotgun. We knew that was the case, and they finally did it.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Well, they let it ride too. So they had some RPO action, but I don't know if we've had a better game out of our two guards and center.
Yeah.
Like our two guards and center
agree.
came to play, and even when Driscoll went out, Herbert came in and played well as well. So those guys move people this week. The guards and center. So even on the RPO action, they were still getting downhill. The thing that's pretty interesting to me about it all is that how do we wait until Miles Sanders is out to run the ball this much?
You know, coaches, man, they got to learn the hard way sometimes.
Well, they
just
clearly
doesn't
saw
make
matchups,
sense
though,
to
right?
me.
Well,
Greg, would you not agree,
A
though?
couple of things.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, where it really came to fruition was they started their third possession of the game with 4 consecutive under center runs, all out of 13 personnel.
Right.
And I would argue, just from a football standpoint, that you can do so much more with your play action pass game with your quarterback under center.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay? And not only because you can do more, but the impact it has on the defense is greater. See, when your quarterback is under center and you have a play action pass game, particularly if you have mid to outside zone runs in your repertoire, which the Eagles do, every team does, there's a boot element to that. Okay, which is not the same with the quarterback in the gun. In fact, the quarterback in the gun, rarely do you see boot action.
Right.
And so because of that element with the mid-zone, outside zone run action and the boot action, you impact first-level defenders because they start to move laterally first. And you also impact second-level defenders because there's a boot element potentially involved there. So you can do more in terms of impacting the defense with your play-action pass game with your quarterback under center than you can in the shotgun or the pistol.
And I think the second drive to go along with what you said, so you add those runs on the center, but you add the reverse element, which kept them out because they ran 3 reverses in one drive, all 3 to Jalen Reagor, just to keep the defense honest, keep them at bay. So it's more variety than what we're accustomed to from the Eagles, for sure.
And it's funny because I think that Reagor had 2 runs on the first possession, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Second. Because the first one they went 3 and out.
The first 2 drives.
Oh yeah, maybe it was the second possession. But the other factor too is then you get into the jet motion action, which does have an impact on defenses as well, because often you'll see defenses, and it depends on the specific defense and how they choose to play it, but often you'll see people move on defense because they're changing their run support. If you look at statistics, you'll find that teams that use motion a lot, they use motion more to run the ball than they do to throw the ball. Most people probably think, oh, it's the pass game,
right?
But they actually use motion more to run the ball than to throw it because it impacts run support and where defensive players are. Because it changes the strength of an offense, and therefore the defense has to change its strength.
Right.
See Kyle Shanahan.
Yes. So do you feel like that was a sign, and I ask this to everybody, that Nick Sirianni is shifting his philosophy from what he was trying to do for the first 7 weeks, or do you believe that was purely matchup driven and that we won't see that as much anymore?
We don't know that.
Yeah, I guess that's too hard to say. I think it's too hard to say.
I asked the tough questions, Jay.
Yeah,
We don't know
that's we don't know. I think this today will be a good tail sign for us.
Well, with their line getting off like they did last week, I mean, at least from when they watched the tape Sunday night and Monday morning, they see this line unbelievably dominant. And we just talked about the interior of their offensive line. They know that, not that they didn't know they could do it, but they've now done it. And it's very clear to me, they know going in, based on their personnel versus the Lions' front 7, they had decided advantage, and they took advantage of it. Now you fast forward to this week's game, where the Chargers, up to last week, had been arguably the NFL's worst run defense. And yes, they did get Justin Jones back, one of their starting defensive linemen, but it's not like you can't run against them.
Right.
And I'm interested to see the approach early on in the first quarter. Does he try to come out throwing like they did get against San Francisco, as you pointed out earlier, when the matchups dictated, okay, Niners are down a lot of corners, let's come out throwing, or will they mix the run in, still come out throwing, but sort of mix the run in, which they did not do against the Niners?
Right. And one reason we thought going into the year that if the Eagles were going to be a better team than people thought, it's because of what they had in the trenches, both defensively and offensively. Now, they lose Sayamalu. They lost Brandon Brooks for quite a while. Jordan Mailata was out. Everybody, Lane Johnson missed time for the personal issues. Everybody but, amazingly, Jason Kelce, the oldest guy on the line, has missed some time. But I have felt that, in general, they've played at a fairly good enough level to be in games and compete in games. And then, obviously, they had the opportunity last week to really assert themselves.
Well, yes, and that's why today becomes so interesting, because they were in a game last week where the way it played out, and clearly the run game helped it play out that way, but Jalen Hurts dropped back 17 times in the entire game.
Right.
That's very rare in an NFL game. My guess is that that's not likely to happen today.
I agree with you.
So the point is, yes, do we all believe, and I think I spoke about it week 1 or 2, that they should put him under center and have that kind of run game with the play action element that goes with it. So I'm a firm believer in that, particularly for a young quarterback who's not a great natural thrower, to help define the reads and the throws for him.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have many games where your quarterback has 17 dropbacks.
Yeah. But the offensive line this year, to my standards, they played well, especially in giving a quarterback enough time to throw the ball. There's been guys open. The quarterback gets out of there a little bit quick. The only game I can think of that they just got, I think, dominated, and even then they had some throws, was maybe the Cowboys game. The Cowboys got after them pretty good.
I mean, I feel like the Raiders edged them pretty well.
They did. The Raiders edged them, but there were still lanes to throw the ball.
There were. Let me get back to the offensive line. Two guys in particular I want to ask you guys about. One, Dickerson, because we've seen kind of a slow progression. That felt like his best game. Now, again, as Greg points out, I think most of his struggles this year have probably been in pass pro.
Oh, yeah, he's a run. I mean,
and they didn't pass a lot, but
you got to remember how big that guy is.
Yeah, he's huge.
I mean, he's like 6'6", 335 pounds now. He's a big dude.
Yep.
I mean, he's a run blocker.
And plus, remember, he's coming back from a devastating knee injury.
Right.
He physically wasn't right, I would say, earlier in the season. He looks really good, And I know they're really happy with the way he's performed. Jack Driscoll's been a nice surprise. We weren't sure if he could play inside.
Right.
Because physically, we had heard that they wanted him to get bigger, and he has.
He did.
Lane Johnson looked great. Mailata's over his MCL sprain. You know, when Mailata came back, my understanding was he clearly was not. It wasn't like he was. They felt he could go out and play, but he was maybe favoring one knee over the other. His pass sets weren't great. He was oversetting.
Right.
He looks great. Again, that was the most dominant game they've had in 2 years.
Sure.
Maybe probably one of the best in several years. So I would expect that they'll have an opportunity to have some big plays in this game because they can protect.
Yeah, Mailata is the other one I wanted to ask you about because he seemed to struggle 2 weeks ago against the Raiders, and Carl Stevenson has noticed this and asked this question as well. Even last week, they ran so much, but there was a few times, I think early on, Charles Harris almost edged him and almost got Jalen Hurts in the end zone for a safety there before Hurts ran away from it. Do you think he's still encumbered a little bit by the brace or the ACL, or is he just facing a different caliber of speed rusher that he probably hasn't seen? Because Harris is more of a speed guy, right? He's
Harris
more of an
has actually
explosive
done well.
guy.
I actually think that Mailata, and maybe it's a function of his knee, you would know better at him.
Yeah.
I don't think he's pass protected real well the last number of weeks. Now, last week it didn't show up because of the nature of the game.
Right.
But I don't think he's been as good the last couple of weeks as he was earlier in the season.
Well, he got Joey
Before they
Bosa
did.
today, right?
He's pretty good.
Did they move Bosa, by the way, Greg? They move around?
Yeah, he plays each side.
All right.
Is
Yeah,
that it?
they're
Why
fine.
is Bosa's numbers sort of pedestrian right now? Is that
You're
just
talking about number of sacks?
Well, even his hurries, I believe, was at 8. It's not, usually he's among the
Right.
leaderboards in all of the major disruptive categories. But I'm just asking if
Yeah,
you've
I mean,
seen
I
any
can't
drop
speak
off,
to-
or is it just?
No, I don't
Okay.
think there's a drop off in his play. No.
Okay. All right. So that is obviously a matchup we will be watching today there in the trenches. I want to go back to what you guys said about Jalen Hurts, the fact that they only threw the ball 17 times. That does not seem like
14
it's
times.
or
Well,
14
17
times.
dropbacks.
17 dropbacks. Not as sustainable. Do you feel like that? Well, here's another tough one. Are they going to try to play hide the quarterback here, or is that just simply we had the ability to steamroll a team and we just steamrolled a team?
The latter. Absolutely the
I
latter.
agree with you on that.
No, I'm not saying if this game's close, they're going to throw it 40 times. I would say probably at least 30 pass attempts in this game. I can't imagine. I don't think this is going to be a 10-7 game. You know, I do believe they're going to have to throw more. But the approach, I think the approach in the first 2 series will tell you the whole game.
Yeah.
If they're throwing 90% of the time the first 2 series, I'm not eliminating that to be the case. It's going to be much like week 2. I don't like that approach with this quarterback or really any quarterback. You've got matchups either whether you want to run it or you want to pass it that you can win. And we just mentioned their lines show that they're back together here and they're healthy.
One thing I noticed while watching the tape, and I wanted you guys to talk about it, and again, every quarterback, you say this all the time, every quarterback misses a throw or misses a read, but we only have what we have to evaluate Jalen Hurts with. And last week it was really only 17 dropbacks. But I do remember a specific 3-man rush on Jalen Hurts, and the pocket in front of him was empty, but he bailed to the left and threw awkwardly to Goddard. It was incomplete, and I thought that was an example of.
Well, no, and I know the exact play you're talking about.
It was a third down, the first third and
Yeah,
six.
and I
No, the
made a note
second
of it
third and
because-
six.
Third down,
The
yeah.
second third and
Because what happened on that specific play is the Lions actually disguised the coverage, but it became cover 2. And they had a perfect route call for cover 2. It was basically a high-low, and Devonta Smith was wide open. Either one of us here should have made the throw, and I don't know why he didn't see it. He looked right at it. Only Jalen Hurts could tell you why he didn't. You know exactly.
I know
what I'm
exactly
talking about.
And then he kind of ran
And
to the
then,
left, right?
he left the pocket for no
Yep.
reason.
For no
to his
reason.
left,
Right.
and then threw to Goddard. But the point is that it was a perfect call for the coverage they got because it was just a high-low versus cover 2. You're throwing it off the corner, and he was sitting low, and Smith was wide open. I mean, it was, that's almost like practice pitch and catch. Wouldn't you agree? It was
Exactly.
practice pitch and catch. He looked right at it. So I can't tell you why he didn't throw it, but those throws have to be made.
Jay, you've been in meeting rooms, offensive rooms with quarterbacks and wide receivers and offensive coaches, and when they're week after week kind of going through a similar style of error or a play that's not being made, does that get very frustrating for the coaches? I mean,
It's frustrating for the coaches.
And
It's
the
frustrating
offense?
for the receivers. It's
Yeah.
frustrating for everyone because it's hard to time up plays. It's hard. That's the hardest part of NFL because remember, this is a changing league where
Right.
defense coordinators don't give you the same coverage twice. So if you can figure out what they're doing and you have a good play call, you want to hit that play because you never know if it's coming back again. So like Greg said, when you get a cover 2 beater and you got Goddard on the low route and you got Devontae over there, you got to hit those. And
you gotta throw it.
you got to hit them and you got to throw it. And what it leads me to believe is, I said every week, is that it's hard for him to see the field. He doesn't know what he's looking at times. And that's what that is. When you see a guy running away from pressure that isn't there, or leaving a pocket when it's clean, he's just not seeing it.
All right, here's the toughest question then to ask. Why? Why can't they see it? If it's there, if you see it on tape, is that just
$1 question?
That's a bunch of different things. Like, I don't know. Drew Brees can see it, and he can see it like this.
He sees it before it happens.
That's why guys are better than others.
You know?
Right.
I mean, even guys who've done it really well, and I've been talking about this a lot for about the last 5 weeks, and now all of a sudden a lot of other people have decided to become my friends and join me. But Patrick Mahomes is having the same problem. And one thing you can look at with quarterbacks is when they drop back, okay, if their head is moving on the drop back, and their helmet is not calm, but it's moving, they're not seeing anything.
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? Quarterbacks need to play with a calm helmet. It's one thing to, let's say, based on a route concept, look off a safety. That's a clearly defined thing where you drop back, you look there, and then you come back there. But if your head on the drop back is moving and your helmet is not calm, you're not really seeing anything. You're seeing it, but you're not seeing it.
You know, and this leads me to this point. You know how many times I came back from the huddle, right, or came back from the play and we were on the sideline, you know, after the series over, touchdown, maybe third down incompletion, whatever it may be. And the quarterback was like, hey, I couldn't see you, but I threw it. And I ended up catching it for it. Like, that's happened 50 times where the guy could not see me, but he threw the ball because he recognized in the defense where the hole is and I should be there. So that's seeing it. Right. It's not always actually physically, visually seeing it, but you know where the defense is going to be. You know where your man's supposed to be. And based on what the defense is doing, my man should be there.
It's
and
funny
you
say
just
that.
throw it.
Timing and anticipation.
It's funny you say that. I had that exact conversation with Steve Young years ago, and he said that's when he became a quarterback in Bill Walsh's system, when he would throw the ball not to a receiver, but to a spot because he saw the defense and he knew that his receiver would be in that spot at the right time.
Yeah. You could see it on when you would watch games there, when they on NFL films, they would show the ball sometimes in slow motion. It was pretty cool. It's funny you mentioned Young. What Young also said, I remember in interviews, he did not trust the system. That's why he used to run a lot.
Right.
And once he trusted the timing system of the old school West Coast offense, just like you said, that ball's out, and you were like, where's he going? There's no one there. And you would see the tight end, Brian Jones or Rice or John Taylor eventually get it.
Right.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's snapshots. The quarterback sees snapshots. At the line of scrimmage, is he on the right side of the route, leverage-wise? If he has an in-breaker route, did he win the line of scrimmage? The quarterback sees that initially right away, but it's going to be a blank spot where it's linebackers and safeties and stuff. But as long as you know the coverage and you know your guy won at the beginning, throw that ball.
Let me ask you, Jay, because we've got some questions about it on YouTube, and I was going to throw it in here at some point. Does giving Jalen Hurts a better wide receiver, like, I don't know, Odell Beckham Jr., make him see the field any better?
No,
or trust the throw any better?
It won't make him see the field because, remember, Adam has been speaking about this entire season. We're bottom in the league. We're throwing the ball over the middle of the field. Where did that play happen? Over the middle of the field. Where does Dallas Goedert, where's he even catching his balls? He's even catching his balls on the edges, right? He's not catching them in the middle. They're corner routes. They're deep overs on the other side of the field, clearing coverage. In the middle of the field, we're not targeting that area. So he'll play better with that guy, but that guy's going to win one-on-one matchups. It'll just do what Matthew Stafford had with Calvin Johnson. Just throw it over there. It's not developing him as a player, but he has an advantage at that matchup, and he just throws it. But it's not going to make him an overall better quarterback.
And it's funny you mentioned Goddard because a lot of the routes he's caught the last couple of weeks have been clearly defined beaters against the anticipated coverage. So those are throws that you're pretty much making out of the huddle.
Schemed up throws.
They're schemed up throws. Right. And hey, those happen with every quarterback in every game. I'm not trying to make it seem like
if you get
Jalen
them, but
Hurts
sometimes
is that.
you gotta go
I mean, Tom Brady gets schemed up throws too. I mean, everybody that's what offensive coordinators do. You know, you study the defense, and you know, I've had conversations with many coordinators, and they say, hey, we take from our playbook for the passing game what the defense does in a given week, and those are the things we put in as the emphasis.
Right.
But those are schemed up throws. Those are not throws where he has to drop back and really see it.
Right.
He just has to confirm it, but he doesn't have to really see it.
Speaking of Goddard, is he getting open repeatedly? Does he look good on tape? How does he look good?
Yeah, he looks good because he can move well. But a lot of these routes, like they've had a lot of these cover 3 beaters, where he runs these intermediate routes in a flood concept, and they're essentially open. But I mean, he's a good mover.
Yeah, we haven't seen a bunch of tight man coverage on him, and it's going to be hard. Like I said, he doesn't have the wiggle of a Kelsey and those guys. So against a number 1 corner, I wouldn't put my money on him. But anybody else, I'm going to put my money on him, and he's going to have that guy most of the time.
Well, speaking of Goddard, I just want to put these numbers out as you talk about him. Chargers giving up over 12 yards per catch to tight ends, which is very high. That's usually a receiver number. They've given up a touchdown in 5 different games. We talked about on our show earlier this week, David Njoku crushed them. Yeah. So did Kelsey. Logan Thomas scored in week 1. So they will give up production. I'm so fascinated to see what the approach will be today from Sirianni, the play caller.
Well, let's get into the Chargers. We'll talk about them a lot because for a lot of coaches on the Eagles staff, the Chargers are a very familiar opponent. Right. We know that the head coach, Nick Sirianni, was a coach with the Chargers for quite a while. He started off as, I believe, offensive quality control. Then he was quarterbacks, and he was wide receivers before he went to join Frank Reich, who left the Chargers to come to the Eagles. He was first Chargers, then Eagles, and then coach of the Colts. We know Shane Steichen, the Eagles' offensive coordinator, was the offensive coordinator last year for the Chargers, so he has a lot of knowledge on Justin Herbert. And you've heard the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, John Gannon, said he's talked with Shane throughout the week to try to get a little bit more inside info on Justin Herbert. We'll see if that worked. And, of course, Jonathan Gannon happens to be so close of a friend to Brandon Staley that they're best friends in each other's weddings, godfather to the kids, all of that. So they grew up together, Gannon and Staley, in the Cleveland area. They competed against each other in AAU basketball. It's where their parents got to know each other, and they're very, very good. As Greg mentioned, they're best of friends. Greg, you've had an opportunity, you've talked about this on this show, to get to know Brandon Staley a little bit. So when you think of Brandon Staley and what he has brought to last year's Rams defense and this year to the Chargers, just his overall his know-how, what defines him?
Well, it's funny you say that because I think everybody in this town has ripped Jonathan Gannon. I think Staley is still trying to figure out exactly what's best with his defense because he didn't become an idiot in one season. It doesn't work like that. I mean, last year he had the #1 defense in the NFL with the Rams, and I think this year he's trying to figure out what works best because he's very multiple. He can be very, very multiple with his looks, his coverages. They played a lot more man coverage this year than he did last year with the Rams. So he obviously feels up to this point in the season that that's the better way to go. Now, we can debate, anybody can debate that. He obviously feels that's the best way to go. But I get the sense watching tape that he's still trying to figure out exactly what he has with this group that he puts out there.
And with those injuries today, do you think they would go with more zone? Theoretically.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't really know the answer. It's easy to say when you don't have great corners, you play zone. That's easy.
Well,
but that may or may not be true.
Because if they go man, would you not attack that?
It's actually easier to go man-to-man when you don't know what to do.
Less thinking. You just go run and cover.
Less thinking.
You play the cat coverage. You got that cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gotcha. It's less thinking that way. Zone can get a little bit tricky because people call things different names. You got a guy coming in off the street, and that cover 4 is a little bit different there and here. It can get a little tricky.
Then you got to understand receiver splits and all the route concepts that come off different splits, and it's coached differently by different guys with eye discipline and all that. So it can be tricky.
Yeah. And they carry a little bit in cover 3 at times. Like there are certain things that you have to know, rules and principles you have to know.
Yeah. What do you guys think overall of this Chargers defense so far?
I mean, I think it's been okay, but they've got good people. See, that's the thing.
That's what
they've got good players, individual players. It just hasn't come together. I mean, Bosa can dominate a game. Derwin James plays 5 or 6 different positions for them and is one of the best multi-dimensional safeties in the game. Obviously people aren't healthy on the outside, and that's a big deal. But Jerry Tillery is a player that can be very, very good inside. Not always, but he can be.
Right.
Yeah.
Notre Dame kid, right? I remember the book on him was he was
White was a safety at West Virginia who they made a linebacker with the Chargers. Right. He flashes. Okay, you see, because he's a big athletic guy with some explosive traits. So he flashes. Drew Tranquil's another Notre Dame kid who tends to play in their nickel and dime. He flashes at times as well. So they have players that flash.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the edges, they're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
Right. When you see teams get caught in a lot of picks, and that's what I've seen on tape with the Chargers. Their DBs get caught in a lot of pick plays, especially last week versus the Patriots. There was like simple third downs that they were throwing to the flats, and they were just getting caught up in the pick because they weren't they were on the same level rather than being in different levels. So little simple things like that I think that we can take advantage of, but we're not a big, picking team. We should after that. Well,
right.
we
should be anyway.
We are a picking team. We just do it in the red zone and where everybody's looking at us.
Might get a penalty.
Well, one thing that jumped out is last week, you look at the box score and you think, well, they give up 27 points to the Patriots. They can't, they must have struggled. And then you realize the Patriots had an offensive a defensive touchdown.
Yeah.
So it wasn't 27.
Defensive player of the week, actually.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's funny you say that.
A bunch of field goals.
I thought their defense played pretty well last week.
They only give up one offensive touchdown.
Yeah, they
correct?
played pretty well.
Yeah.
And Mac Jones only completed about 50% of his balls.
Weird game.
Exactly.
And they ran it a lot because the game allowed them to run it. The Patriots, but Harris, their number one back, at 23 for 80. It wasn't as if he was
3.5 yards.
Yeah.
Plus
Right.
some yards carries in there.
I thought, and Staley's right. It's easy to look at the aggregate numbers, and prior to last week, there were a lot of bad performances numbers-wise. But I thought if you just looked at last week's tape, they did not play bad defense last week at all.
You mentioned one of my favorite players in the NFL, and that's Derwin James. I loved watching him at Florida State. Loved watching him in the NFL. He's so versatile. How would you expect them to use him today against what the Eagles do? Like, who is going to be the one who feels the Derwin James wrath?
Yeah, well, he had a great interception earlier this season in man-to-man coverage against Darren Waller. He can match up to the tight ends. He can play anywhere. They use him on the ball, off the ball, back end safety, in the box. He plays 5 or 6 different positions for them, and he can blitz. It wouldn't surprise me if at times he's a spy on Hurts, depending on the situation.
But he definitely can match up with Dallas because he trains in practice guarding Keenan Allen every time. That's what he does. Like in one-on-ones, Derwin James and Keenan Allen. That's the thing there in Chargers land. And so if he can stay with Keenan Allen, he can stay with Dallas Goedert. Now the physicality may be a little bit different, but he plays with the hair on fire. That's the thing that you see when you play. He plays the game in old school. If you're a football coach, you love that kid or that young man.
And I was actually at Chargers training camp this summer. You were out there, right?
Yeah, go ahead first.
He just looks.
I was going to say
the way he looks, he just looks like one of those guys.
He moves differently. You don't see safeties move like this.
Yeah.
And I was telling Jeff on our show this week, I don't typically want to watch safeties. I watched him.
He's fascinating.
He is, and he's overcome a lot of significant injuries, unfortunately, but he's been terrific. But I'm telling you, the numbers, if you just look at raw numbers, Chargers this season against tight ends, 41, 514 yards, 12.5 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns in 7 games. They're ranked 31st in yards per target. They give up big plays to tight ends. So that's why I wonder, what are they going to do to stop Goddard? Goddard right now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Without Ertz here, you saw the first 2 games without Ertz. He's been very active. I think he could be more dominant. That's how gifted he is. I'm interested to see what they do to him.
And he could also be the kind of tight end that's not one of those 10.2 yards per catch guys, but more like a 14, 15.
Which he is right now, right? Did you say 15 yards per catch?
He's second on the team in yards per catch behind Devontae
Quez.
Smith.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Quez is higher.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm just talking about. I'm talking about even as a volume guy. Like, I'm not saying he's going to catch 120 balls, but he could be the kind of guy that with 65 catches is 14, 15 yards a catch.
Sure. All right, we're going to take a real quick break to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars, including the voice of the Eagles, Mr. Merrill Reese.
Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you get a chance to check out our friends at Sky Motor Cars out in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You'll get a great deal. I want to finish off just talking a little bit more about the Chargers, because that was my thought, that when you look at them on paper, you say, they've got personnel.
They've
got good players. And then again, you look at the Patriots game. The Patriots only averaged 3.8 a carry.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of running yards, but they didn't run the ball extremely well. But this team has lost 2 in a row. Sometimes that happens throughout the schedule. There's an ebb and flow. Are you seeing what do the Chargers usually do well, or what have they did well that they're not doing now?
The last 2 weeks, their offense has not played particularly well.
And that symbiotic relationship.
Right. That's the deal. You know. So, and we can discuss. I don't know. Do you want to discuss that now?
The Chargers
offense.
Not yet.
No, okay.
I was about to go into it.
I was
just going to say that their offense has not played well the last 2 weeks. Just as a quick point, we'll get into more as the show goes on. I thought that the game they lost to the Ravens, they just had a bad offensive game. That happens, okay? I thought last week Belichick did some really good things, which we can discuss in more detail.
2 years in a row?
Yeah, but I thought he did some really interesting things last week that caused some problems for them, which then also plays into what I thought Jonathan Gannon did last week, which I thought was really good.
Right.
So we'll get into all that.
Adam, but wasn't there a person? Aren't they getting somebody back on the line that they've been missing?
Justin Jones came back last week.
Okay.
Well, that's on defense.
Right. But it's in terms of helping their defense. But one thing I want to get to, Greg, on the Charger defense, the one game where they just didn't show up at home, they won the game, was against Cleveland. I mean, they got gashed.
Yep.
I mean, Chubb killed them. Hunt got him. And Joko, as I mentioned earlier, crushed them, 71-yard touchdown catch. I know that was 4 games ago.
I remember that play. That was actually a missed tackle.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
they
gave up.
counts.
The run defense was terrible in that game. So what's been the problem when they've not played good run defense? Gap discipline.
Yeah, I mean that's run defense is usually not complicated when you talk about a team that's having a hard time.
Yeah.
Because it basically has to do with gap integrity, gap discipline. I remember at the Combine years ago having a great conversation with Ron Rivera and telling me that literally like 80% of big runs occur not because they're incredibly well blocked. I mean, obviously that happens every once in a while.
Which was last week.
Right. But because of problems with gap integrity and gap discipline on the defense. And all it takes in the NFL is one guy to take one step the wrong way, and you can have bigger runs. That's the way it would. And the other factor that plays into it, which is not talked about a lot, are missed tackles. Because particularly when you're in confined space, you have to tackle the ball carrier. And I think they've struggled with that as well.
Yeah, I can think of another team that was struggling in that department for a little while when they had Eric Wilson at linebacker.
Yes, he no longer is there.
So when I think about the Chargers, I don't think about the Chargers. Last year is a totally different year than this year. This year, the Chargers haven't been the greatest team, the best team on defense, right? They're not getting the stops that they need, but they've had timely turnovers in some big games earlier in this year that put them on the plus side of the win-loss column, right? So these last 2 weeks, when your quarterback is turning the football over and you're a team that doesn't have the greatest defense, the best defense this year, you're going to be on the negative side of that. And because they need that timely turnover in order to sustain. They need good offense and turnovers. It's only a few ways to win. This is the Indianapolis Colts motto. Score a lot of points. Defense not the best, but they get timely turnovers.
And we'll discuss this more with their offense, but they also don't really have any kind of consistent run game. And as talented as Justin Herbert is as a second-year quarterback, at some point, if you don't have a run game, it's a problem.
Right. How would you go about attacking the Chargers today if you're the Eagles? Are you going heavy downhill run again? Are you trying to open it up a little bit on these corners?
Based on person.
Like what do you expect?
Based on if I'm looking at it from personnel standpoint and I'm doing a self-scout, I am going to try to run the football as much as I can. If I'm self-scouting, if I'm being realistic with myself and I'm looking at the quarterback situation that we have and our quarterback not being able to see the field clearly and him missing so many throws, that means that he needs the run game in order to be to put us in the best position to win. And use boots and play action off of that and kind of keep his throws down. Not get into the 30 range and let that be the highest, the maximum. But that's the way I would approach it, if I'm looking at myself from an honest eye.
And I would do it similarly for this reason. When you do that, if you line up, let's say in 12 personnel, maybe some snaps of 13, that has an impact on how the defense lines up, okay? Because more than likely, you line up in 12 personnel, particularly if the tight ends are attached, not detached. what you're going to get from the Chargers is more than likely single high safety, okay? Now you can, if you choose to, you can work the play action pass game on the perimeter. You're going to get one-on-one matchups. That's what you're ultimately looking for. And it defines things for Jalen Hurts. Play action tends to define reads and throws for the quarterback. That's what you're trying to do. So I would definitely do that. Obviously, your defense has to play well so the score is not 17-6 in the second quarter and you're losing. But I think you help. Number one, you attack what has been a weakness of the Chargers.
Right.
And you play to what I believe is the strength of your offense, and then you give your quarterback a really good chance to be more successful.
Sure.
And what Greg is saying with the play action brings guys toward the line of scrimmage, the linebackers, safeties, whoever's on the second level, brings them toward the line of scrimmage, which makes the throw behind them that much easier. A lot of times, the Eagles this year, they're doing traditional drop back plays. Those guys in the second level can drop back further because they have less to coverage. There's no threat of the run. So it's harder you have to be pinpoint accurate to be able to get in those windows. But when the guy's close to the line of scrimmage, you don't have to be the most accurate, and you can see the field better. So I agree with him a bunch.
We talked about how they used Jalen Reagor on that either first or second drive where they got him the ball. That's something I feel like this team could have been doing more. And if it's not Jalen Reagor, maybe a Greg Ward, just something motion, orbit motion, putting the ball in hands of different guys. Quez Watkins we talk about, maybe closer to the line of scrimmage.
Even if Hightower's available today, who's fast. Yeah, take advantage. That was the thing you and I have been talking about on our show for weeks. Take advantage of that speed you have. The Niners, I remember talking to them. So the one thing that stood out to the Eagles in their tape watching of the Falcons game, this is week 2.
Right.
He said how fast the Eagles have become. All of a sudden, Greg would tell us how slow they looked on tape.
Well, they were slow.
Right, that's what it showed. But now they have all the speed. Well, you know what? Take advantage of it.
Right.
And you have a vertical tight end. So when you do throw it, take advantage of it. I understand that Hurts has not been perfect. We've outlined what his limitations are. When you throw it, take advantage of it. And also, gadget plays. I love the way that they used Reagor last week, and clearly he's been cleared to play with the ankle.
Right.
Keep doing it.
Jeff, football is a game, and Jason knows this, of probability and tendency, okay? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to put the defense, if you're an offensive coach, in a situation where you feel very comfortable with the tendency you're going to get, whether it's a front or a coverage. And fronts and coverage are usually tied together anyway. But you're trying to, and so what that does is if you want to throw it, you're giving your quarterback more pre-snap information. That's what you're trying to do.
Right.
You know, particularly with young quarterbacks. What you want to do with young quarterbacks is when they drop back, have them confirm, not decipher.
Right.
There's a big difference. Okay, so based on use of personnel, formations, that tells you what you're going to get from the defense based on your film study that week.
Sure.
That's what you're trying to do. It's all about tendency and probability.
Right. Right. What can we, by the way, when Adam mentioned the tight end element, what can we realistically expect from Tyree Jackson today?
Well, he is healthy. He's healthy enough to play. Now, remember, he's never played in an NFL game, right?
Right.
He didn't play in the preseason this year.
Right.
Because he
You just throw him out there in a game in week 9
no,
and see
but
if he can
here's
handle
the
it?
thing. No, this is a great question. Physically, he's able to catch the football. He's been cleared medically.
Well, that's good. He's a tight end.
Yeah. So we know he can run, but we know he can run.
Check.
Right. We know he can run, but
He need to be blocking.
But that's
I don't
the
know
thing.
about that.
The
He's
blocking
not that.
thing,
Yeah.
we were told for a guy who had not played tight end before wasn't terrible, but it's been so long, Jeff, I don't know that you could play him very much, other than
That's
let him
what
go
I'm
catch a
wondering.
football.
Plus he's so raw and inexperienced, and
Right.
you're trying to win a game. Like, can you just maybe draw up 2 or 3 packages of plays where you think he can cater to his strengths?
Well, last week, Jack Stahl played a ton of snaps, 65% of
He
snaps,
did.
which is a career high for him in a short career. You have to dress 3 tight ends, so Jackson will be a 3rd tight end. So theoretically, he might play 10 to 15 snaps. But I would think as a pass catcher,
He'll play situational.
yeah, I don't know if you could ask him to block very much at this point,
Yeah.
All
And
right.
the second guy has to be able to block.
which
Jay,
would be Stoll.
real
Yeah.
quick before we kind of get to the second half, because Mike Stansberry has asked on YouTube about Jalen Hurts, what we've been talking about. Do we know enough yet? Do we know enough yet through 8 weeks now? Is it 7 or is this 8? Yeah, this is week 9.
This is
Yep,
week 9.
they have another bye.
Do you feel like you're starting to know enough yet about Jalen Hurts as far as
Well, he's not a pure thrower. Like he makes a lot of completions in practice, from my experience. And when everything is clear, he can make the throws. But like I said, game time is a totally different thing. Guys look better in shorts. They look better when they're comfortable. But he's not, at this point, he has to prove to everyone. They have to go on some type of win streak in order for Jalen Hurts to be considered a starter in this city. They would have to go on an amazing win streak in order to change the minds of most people in the city.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. And we'll see what happens over the second half of the season.
I would echo that in the sense that he's not, and I saw this studying his Alabama tape and his Oklahoma tape, he's not a natural thrower. Now, again, does that mean he can't play quarterback in the NFL? That in and of itself, no. But he doesn't have that to fall back on. Some guys are just natural, pretty throwers.
Right.
He's not that guy.
Right. And then, of course, you have to open up the discussion with the Eagles are involved as far as patience, time, what you're looking for. That all is for the offseason. This is not exactly the most patient.
But again, by the way, the staff knows way more than we do about what he is and what he isn't. They're with him every day.
Right.
Yes.
So they know way more than we do. We see him on, playing in the games, and that's what fans critique, the games, but the coaches know way more.
This is, however, this is supposed to be an evaluation year, right? We know that.
Yeah.
There becomes a point where you go, okay, we've seen enough. Are we in the playoff race or not? If they're not, then they have a decision to make. If they are in it, I don't know if they're going to pull him. If he continues to be inconsistent on being kind about it, he needs to play at a much higher level. It's clearly not been good enough. We all know that. And as we all know, the coaches know this. They're watching the tape, and he sees it, and you guys just outline the passes he's not making.
Yeah.
And that can't continue because there are plays to be made where their passing game should be much better.
Got to make the layups.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to make the layups.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, and I have to put this out there, I have to say it, is that Jalen Hurts, no matter what, hasn't played up to par. We know that.
Right.
I agree with you all wholeheartedly. I don't think that this organization and coaching staff have done him any favors either. Because this past week, running the ball, and doing play action under center, those are the types of things that he needs. And they totally abandoned him at times when it comes to running the football, to me.
Well,
I know you got to jump ahead, but it's interesting you say that.
So I think that's an organization. No failure.
Absolutely.
I think that's
but
that's
it's
part
interesting
of
you say
it
that
too.
because you could also make the point. I'm not taking a side here. I'm trying to just look at it both ways. That maybe in their mind they thought they were playing to what his strength is. He spent his whole life as a shotgun quarterback with RPOs, with quick throws. So maybe they thought they were actually playing to what they believed his strength was.
I'm sure that's what their plan was.
And it hasn't worked. So now it's easy to say they're wrong. So now will they continue to put him under center? And we'll find that out today.
They tried something else. But Greg, our panel here, when you were out in Baldy filming, we all said the same thing. Put him under center.
Well, I said that week too.
Okay, right. No, but we've been saying it all season. Put him under center. And they did it, and they were successful. It looked really good. And as Jeff said, it looked good to start the Raider game, but unfortunately they gave up 30 straight points.
Yeah.
So now we've seen him do it well.
It's him under center, but it's the number of passing plays as well.
Correct.
Like that's too many.
Sure.
It's too many for him at this stage. Let's
handle it. Right.
Yeah. Let's win this game. Running the football first mentally. Let's go in with the game plan that way.
I think there's a great discussion to be had down the road when it's time, and we'll have it, about the idea of trying to, when you already know you have a project quarterback second round, giving him a 1-year trial when you are the Eagles and not per se maybe a different organization that has a different history of developing players at certain positions. He could certainly go to a different team next year, Steelers, Raiders, who knows? Not Raiders, I'm sorry, Ravens, something like that, and I might think differently about his potential because maybe that team's a little more patient, understanding with what they want to do with him than the Eagles have shown to be. That's a discussion for down the line. We thank you again for tuning in to Inside the Birds pregame live with, of course, Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, Greg Cosell, and Jason Avant. And now a word from our good friends and sponsors here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
This is my city. This is a city that knows how to play. A city that's in it for the win. So I go to the place that gets that. Where they know how Philly likes to play. And where I know my seat is always ready. This is my place.
All right, here at Rivers Casino, where everybody loves a winner. We thank our friends at Rivers for the wonderful accommodations here. As we continue the show, we move into hour 2 of Inside the Birds pregame live, like we do all the time, with a special segment from former Eagles safety, Pro Bowl safety, Quentin Mikell. It's called Q's Views, and on this episode of Q's Views, we talk with Quentin Mikell about some of his more memorable moments in Eagles-Chargers history. All right, we are here with former Eagles Pro Bowl safety, Quentin Mikell. And Q, the Eagles are going to play the Chargers this afternoon at the Link. You may have a fond memory of playing the Chargers at the Link back in your day, no?
Yeah, I have a very fond memory. 2005 game was a back and forth game, close game, and I ended up coming up with the block that secured Matt Ware for the game-winning touchdown down the sidelines, and kind of was my introduction to Eagles fans and Matt Ware's as well. And so it was a great experience, a lot of fun, and one of my fondest memories of being an Eagle.
No doubt. Well, several years later, the Eagles really need this game, just like you guys needed it that year from a slow start. Eagles really need this game if they want to turn their season around and kind of probably restore the faith of the fan base. Let me ask you this. If they lose but play very well today, do you think that that's a sign of progress for a team that's kind of gotten destroyed by better teams this year?
No, I'm not a huge fan of the moral victory type deal. Now, obviously, each week we want to see progress as fans, and I'm sure as the coaching staff, we want to see progress, and you want to see the team getting better. But you don't go out there just to be close, right? You go out there to win the game, and so and I think this is a winnable game. I think this is a game that the Eagles definitely are kind of built for. So I think they're expecting to win. I know as fans we're expecting to win. So anything less, I don't think would be considered a success.
Jonathan Cannon was more aggressive against the Lions with blitzing, playing his safeties a little bit lower, doing things to challenge the Lions up front. But the Chargers are a totally different offense. Do you expect him to challenge similarly today, or are you expecting something else?
I'm expecting him. I'm hoping that he continues with the same type of game plan. Listen, this is the NFL. I mean, everybody gets paid. Everybody on the field gets paid. Coaches get paid. Players get paid, and you get paid to do your job. And so I don't think if you want to be a successful long-term defensive coordinator, you can't go into games being afraid. And certainly as players, you can't go into the game as a player being afraid. And so my hope is that the game plan continues to be aggressive, because we've already seen what happens when you just sit back in zone. We've already seen what happens when you play it safe, you get picked apart. So why not just go out there and stay aggressive? You've had your best game as a defense. I don't care if it's the Lions. Like I said, they get paid too, right? They have a first-round quarterback on their roster too. So, to me, I say go after them, stay aggressive, continue the same game plan, and see where the chips fall.
All right, looking at it from a defensive perspective, you played safety. In the Chargers passing game against this Eagles defense, what matchup are you watching the most? Is it Keenan Allen and Mike Williams against the corners, or is it Austin Eckler and what he can do from a pass catching standpoint against the interior of this Eagles defense?
Certainly number one. I think Austin Eckler definitely is a very viable threat. Their running game hasn't been very good this year, mostly because he's been injured. But I think on the outside it's going to be the key matchup, and I'm going to be interested to see if it was me, I'd put Slay on I'm blanking right now on
Keenan Allen,
and then I definitely if I'm the Chargers, I would put, if Mike Williams is on Nelson, that's where I would be looking to go. So if I'm a defensive coordinator, I try to make sure I get Slay more singled up, and then I try to make sure I get some help leaning towards Nelson on Mike Williams. He's a big target, big play guy down the field, and that's how I would be. I think that Slay can definitely play well against Keenan Allen and take away I'm so blanking right now. Take away Herbert's first option. And so, if you take away the first option, create some pressure, and then, take away the jump ball, the deep ball from Mike Williams, you definitely have a chance.
What stands out about Justin Herbert in year two?
I think what stands out the most for me is usually it's funny when a rookie quarterback comes in and plays a lot his first year. The second year, you always see a drop off, and then they pick it back up the next year. And it's because most teams, they get to study a whole offseason of that quarterback and figure out what he does well, what he doesn't do so well, and they attack that. And I think that he's in his second year, he's continued to ascend. And I think the thing that to me that stands out the most is he has a lot of poise in the pocket. He doesn't panic. Even when you get pressure on him, he doesn't pull the ball down just to run. He pulls the ball down to find receivers down the field, and that's what makes him extremely dangerous. And he's very smart. He's very intelligent. He's big. I didn't realize. I mean, when he was in college, you know, he looked big in college, but he looks huge out there. He's 6'5", 6'6", and so he can see the entire field. And so those things are what stands out the most to me. And you know, my hope is you continue to get pressure on him, but you try to take away his first and second read and his first and second options, and then with a lot of hustle from the D line, you know, rushing to get him because he's not going to pull down the run, he's going to pull down the pass. So if they continue to play with high motors on that front four, they can create some problems for him.
Q, the Chargers have the worst run defense in the NFL, both in yards allowed and yards per carry average against them. You saw what the Eagles did with their downhill style running game against the Lions. Is it essential that they attack the same way against the Chargers?
Absolutely. Especially this week. Now, what they do well is they rush the passer. You know, Bosa and that defensive front can definitely get after it. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're dropping back in third and long and have to deal with those guys. So I definitely think that it's always been the formula is to run downhill, but also change it up, run some perimeter run game. You know, some zone read, just things that keep that defensive front guessing and moving and not sure exactly what's coming at them. And that's the perfect formula. I think what they did last week against the Lions is the perfect formula for this team moving forward offensively.
You've seen Dallas Goedert the last 2 weeks become tight end number one and catch a lot of balls, and I believe over 70 yards in both games. Is he starting to become that target that Jalen Hurts needs to target several times a week?
Absolutely. A good tight end, you know, a good, fast, athletic tight end is a young quarterback's best friend. And the thing about, I think that's kind of the understated thing about tight ends, especially, you know, Dallas Goedert, is their catch radius. And when you have a quarterback that has some accuracy issues, which Hurts has at times, when a tight end has enough catch radius to, you know, kind of make those catches away from his body, but also be able to shield the defender away from his body, that coupled with being in coverage sometimes on safeties and sometimes on linebackers, it makes for a good option for young quarterbacks. And so that, and then his ability to break tackles and run after the catch are huge. So we're starting to see what could be with Dallas and what he can, you know, add to this offense. And I'm excited for it because he's going to be a playmaker down the stretch here.
All right. You said this is a winnable game, no moral victory. So tell me what happens at the end of this game.
Yeah, I think this is a winnable game. I think it's definitely going to come down to the wire. It's going to be a close one in my view. I still feel like it's going to be a high-scoring game, so I'm going to give this one to the home team. As always, I'm going to say the Eagles win 34-31.
Wow, Quentin Mikell Island predicting the Chargers to win. You heard it from here. Former Eagles Pro Bowl safety Quentin Mikell. Thanks, Q.
All right, thanks.
All right, that was our good friend, former Eagles Pro Bowl safety Quentin Mikell for Q's Views, as we do it start hour 2 with Q's Views every show. Also, we want to thank, as always, our friends from Public Square and Rebel Hill. They are back. The team of James and Zach are back behind the controls, bringing Inside the Birds to you in high definition with great graphics, videos, and more. So contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions to produce your webcast, podcast, live show, or anything else you can dream of. Commercials, that's right. They'll do everything. This team can bring it to life. And, of course, again, happy birthday to James Hayden of Public Square Media.
You knew he was not 30 years old yet when he has no gray hair.
I could when he said 26, I was
come on, man.
Jeez, my God.
He's a Vikings fan, isn't that? Is that what our
He is a
insider
Vikings
told us?
fan. Yes, unfortunately for him, he is a Vikings fan.
And he's been suffering, yes.
A long-suffering Viking. No, we can't call him a long-suffering Viking. He's not old
Bowl.
enough to be a long-suffering Vikings
He
fan.
knows about Gary Anderson. He knows.
He knows about the purple people eaters, right? Oh, and speaking of, we always know here
we go.
at Jack's
So much,
Restaurant, if you ask, they will deliver.
With the dog jersey, I love it, man.
This is our friend Ron. Thank you, Ron.
What do you got there?
Salute to our audience.
Thanks, man.
A little drink.
Thank you.
Yeah, Adam kept it on the conservative side. A little water. I went with the pina
We'll
colada.
do the beer at some point.
And
Thank you.
Jason Avant
What's a Shirley
ordering
Temple,
himself
of
a
course.
nice little pink drink, too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it.
We will. Thanks,
All
man.
right. Come. Like
got
I
it,
said,
man.
Jack's Restaurant. You ask,
Kinda
they
like
deliver.
this.
Guys like Ron in the
This is
Dolphins
awesome.
jersey.
What,
Gotta
how come
love
it took until week 9?
Everybody's a critic, Cosell, huh?
We appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, let's get into the matchup. We said we were going to get into this Chargers offense, and Jason Avant
Yeah.
will be back with us momentarily. Most Eagles fans today will get a look, their first look live, especially if you're at the game, at Justin Herbert. He's been hailed as the next great thing in NFL quarterbacking, as he is a second-year quarterback out of Oregon, somewhat of a phenom because last year he set a variety, like over a dozen rookie passing records, including touchdowns and completions. There were some questions, Adam, I remember about, I want to ask this for both of you. I remember when he came out of Oregon, there were some questions about him, like, is he the right leader? Is he a little bit of an oddball for a quarterback? He's not even the
quiet,
first
right,
quarterback
right,
taken.
right.
Tua obviously was, or no, it was Burrow, then Tua.
Then Tua at 5,
then
and
Herbert.
Herbert 6, yep.
And this guy has been unbelievable, I think.
So I would go back to the Senior Bowl last year. I'm sitting next to a college quarterback coach.
Okay.
He and I were watching, and Herbert had this somewhat of an annoying trait. He kept holding onto the ball, waiting to the pass target to break open. And this quarterback coach said, it may work at our level, it's not going to work at the next level. Mm-hmm. And we weren't sure what we would see. So, Greg, I would turn it over to you. The anticipation part of his game was not great at Oregon, but as an NFL quarterback, what have you seen from him for the 2 years?
Yeah, and that's true, by the way. The tape told you, watching his Oregon tape, that he was not a great anticipation thrower. That's kind of changed in the NFL. It's funny, watching him in the NFL, and he was this way last year under Shane Steichen, and he's that way this year as well. In some ways, he's a very mechanical, robotic player, but in a good way. Mm-hmm. He drops back, hits the back foot, the ball comes out. He's very rhythmic. He seems to have a pretty refined feel for the pass game. He's certainly capable of big-time throws. He's got a huge arm, and he does have movement ability, although he's a pocket quarterback at his core. He's a real interesting mix of efficiency, refinement, and second reaction ability when needed. So he's a really talented quarterback, and we can get into a little bit what Bill Belichick did last week, but obviously the last 2 games have not been very good for both Herbert and the offense.
Really quick, though, as you were just going through what he is, where does it start with him? Is it the base and the body? Is it the arm? Like, what's the first thing that sets him apart for why he's doing so well?
Well, I think the size and the arm.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he's got a big-time arm, but he can throw with pace and touch, which is often something that guys with big-time arms take some time to be able to do. But he does throw with pace and touch. He can do that. He can feather the ball. He can layer the ball. Mm-hmm. So he's got everything you want in a quarterback. And from what I understand, well, this I know for a fact, as Adam does as well, the Wonderlic test is not even a factor anymore now when it comes to mental testing. Mm-hmm. There are other tests, 2 in particular, that are used, and he has scored off the charts on both of those tests. They're geared more for football intelligence as opposed to just quote-unquote intelligence.
Yep.
Yeah, football intelligence, and he scores off the charts. And the whole personality thing, by the way, that was blown way out of proportion. Mm-hmm. He may not be a stand-up comic, but he's not he's not quiet in the sense that he doesn't speak or he doesn't talk.
Uh-huh.
So, Greg, let's flip this back to what happened, not only this game, New England, and also Baltimore. What happened in both New England games, last year and this year, for Herbert?
Well, I don't remember every detail about last year, but I can tell you what happened last week. Right. And last week, what Bill Belichick did was a couple of things. Number one, Belichick predominantly will play man coverage. That's the Patriot staple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Last week, he mixed it up much more. He played far more coverage concepts. He went beyond just playing man. And, of course, when he does that, he shows them differently. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't look the same. Any young quarterback, any quarterback really, obviously veterans, the great ones, are better at recognizing and deciphering. But any young quarterback, you're trying to make them think after the snap of the ball.
Right.
Because that immediately slows down their process. And Belichick did an unbelievable job doing that. The second part of what he did had to do with pressure. Because as Adam mentioned in the first part of our show, the right side of their offensive line are backups. And Belichick did a really good job of attacking with his fronts and his concepts, stunts, slants, of attacking the right tackle and the right guard. And that posed a problem throughout the game.
Michael Schofield. Schofield, who's been
He's been
a
through the
journeyman.
league.
He's been, gosh, he's been in the league 10 years now.
Yeah.
So Storm Norton.
Has he been in 10 years?
14, 9 years. 14.
Storm Norton
yeah.
came from Toledo. He played in the MAC.
One of my favorite names in the NFL.
It is a
right
cool
now.
name.
Storm Norton.
He's got the man bun. Yeah, he's number 74 in your program, and 72 is Schofield. Storm Norton's a guy that is a good story that he's made it. You don't want him if the Chargers being the starting right tackle. So, Greg, Josh Sweat, who will line up on the left side, you would think he would do well this game.
You would
It's a
think.
good matchup.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let me ask you, because we've talked about Jonathan Gannon and how he has attacked, for lack of a better word, or how he has schemed up what he wants to do in certain instances. Last week, Jason, we saw him more aggressive, right? We saw him make some changes, brought a safety in the box a little bit more, blitzed a little bit more. And I think the big question, I know you talked about it with Q on Q&A, is when you play a team like the Chargers that has not Jared Goff, but Justin Herbert, not Khalif Raymond, but Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, clearly a better quarterback and set of weapons. Does Jonathan Gannon continue to be aggressive, or do you feel like this is the game where he goes back and says, I'm trying to limit all the deep stuff, keep it all in front of me?
No. You have to be aggressive because doing it.
But you would think he will be.
I would think that this would inspire him to continue to evolve and get better at it. What he's doing, we're bottom of the league in giving up yards. We're bottom of the league. We're actually 32nd in quarterback completion percentage, right? Everyone's completing the ball against us, right? So you have to throw off timing. What Bill Belichick did was throw off timing.
Right.
You get in man coverage, that throws off timing. You start switching up coverages. A little cover 2 man, a little cover 3, a cover 2 in there. Now you get the quarterback confused. And he still is a young quarterback. He's a great talent, but he can be confused. And I think the Eagles can do that. And I think Jonathan Gannon has to continue down that path. Now, the first play of the game brings slot pressure. I'm like, dude, this is a defense coordinator. This is your job, right? And T.J. Hockenson caught the ball, but he got up like, dude, the quarterback's gonna get me killed. You should have panned and saw his face. Usually after the first catch, the guy gets up hype. Yeah, let's go. He was looking at the camera. He was like, dude, this dummy just threw this ball and got me blasted on the first play of the game, right? So that's kind of setting the tempo, and I think that you have to continue down that path, and your players will respond to that.
Well, here's what I saw, too, with Gannon last week, and you tell me. And I made a note of this. I thought that they featured cover 3 as a foundation last week as opposed to cover 4. But I thought they had some wrinkles, okay? Number one, I thought they did more of what I call boundary lock. Teams have different names for it. So, in other words, if you're playing cover 3, you have your corner who lines up on the short side of the field, match up man-to-man. The other thing I thought they did is they played some man-to-man outside the numbers with zone inside. Okay, the Saints are very well known for that. That's the Dennis Allen staple. You play man outside and you play zone match inside. I thought Gannon did more of these kinds of things last week, and I think he's trying to get to that. I mean, my sense is he's been working toward doing this all year, because we all know that what he did through the first 5-6 weeks is not the way he wants to play. No one wants to play that way. He played that way, and again, fans can rip him all day long, but he played that way because he thought he had to. Obviously, the results were poor, but I guarantee he played that way because he thought he had to. Last week, I thought, I saw anyway on tape, some wrinkles in base coverage concepts, and basically that's what teams do, because there's not 100 coverages. So it's all the wrinkles within coverages, and it's all how you get to them. Jason mentioned what Belichick did. It's disguise. It's late movement. It's getting to things so it looks like one thing and becomes something else.
Deception in disguise, Adam. What a concept, right?
We were there. We were all at training camp. And the thing that excited Jeff and I in particular, because we would talk about it on our show, is, wow, did you see what they did with the DN standing him up? Did you see that the linebacker drop into a zone so the quarterback had to hold on the football? And other than week 1, we didn't really see it. And I'm glad that Greg mentioned that. Maybe we've talked about this last couple weeks. They're doing a little bit more of it, but nowhere near the point what we were expecting.
Yeah. But and I brought up, it's training camp, and maybe sometimes what you see is something interesting, but what the coach sees in the evaluation is, well, I tried to do that. It may have looked good in training camp, but really the offense screwed up there, or we left a wide receiver wide open when we did that. He just didn't happen to be hit in that.
And
practice,
by the way,
they
have meetings too.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough in my career. I know Jason's been an assistant coach, so he's done it. But I've been fortunate in my career to sit in meetings. Okay, and I sat in defensive back meetings, and a lot of times they'll start going through coverages, and they'll say, "Hey, Jason, what do you do in this coverage?"
Right.
And I've seen guys sit there and have no freaking idea.
Right.
They don't have an answer. So there's no way they're then going to do that in the game if the guy in the meeting
sure.
room doesn't
Right.
have an answer.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're not in those meetings.
We're not in those meetings.
Yeah.
The thing that I saw last, and you saw it versus Carolina too, but only 2 times where it's an NFL-style game on the back end of the defense, meaning that there's balls being contested at the catch point.
Right.
That's what the NFL is about. It's a thin margin for
Right.
error and victory and loss in that point. You should always see guys compete for the ball. T.J. Hockenson had to come back and make a few plays. Our guys were breaking on balls. Usually that happens when the defensive line is getting after it and the defensive coordinator is aggressive in blitz calling. It gives your DBs the confidence to sit on a route or two and have the confidence that their guys are going to get home and they don't have to cover all day. So our guys felt a little bit comfortable last week going against the Lions. Maybe it's because of the personnel, the bad season, or whatever it is, but it was one of the first times this year that I saw the defense comfortable in contesting balls on the back end, and it was good to see.
Can they execute properly execute if they want to play that cover 3 where they have a boundary corner, and let's say it's Slay, all right? And then I guess with the way that the Chargers line up, Keenan Allen's mostly inside? Is that a lot inside?
Well, when they line up in base, it'll be Allen and Williams outside. But if they line up in 11 personnel with 3 wide, almost always Mike Williams is the boundary X, and Allen works on the wide side of the field because he's their motion receiver.
Sure. Yeah. And then who's their shot guy? Is Guyton? Is that?
Well, they use Guyton, and they use the rookie from Tennessee, Josh Palmer, who's got a big body. He's actually looks like an NFL receiver.
Yeah. And you always have a built-in shot with Mike Williams because he's so big.
Right. And in the red zone, he hadn't done it much, but I did see in training camp, Donald Parham Jr., 6'8".
Yep.
They love him. He will be the heir apparent to Jared Cook.
Now Cook can still run.
He can, but the thing that the Chargers have had to do is keep him in more than they'd like because the right side is a problem. That is the matchup today. What they do to that Chargers right side of their offensive line.
Right.
I'm fascinated to see what the Eagles bring on defense.
Do you like Slay versus Mike Williams on the boundary? Because he seemed to struggle a little bit last year against the bigger physical, the contested catch type guy.
I like Slay versus Mike Williams. I don't.
He's having a good year.
He is the reason. Part of the reason that the Chargers have lost the last 2 games, they haven't been able to get him the ball.
Right.
That's a big reason. Now he's had two receptions last week, and I think like 19 yards or something like that. It wasn't a bunch. So when he's catching the football and he's scoring touchdown, I think he has 6 touchdowns this year.
He was on a roll.
He's on a roll early this year.
Incredible.
He's a
contract
talented
year too.
guy.
Yeah, so he's a talented guy.
He did have a knee injury. He's now off. He had it for 3 weeks.
Right.
He's now off the injury report. That may have had something to do with it. But as we go through the show, these matchups, man, these are fascinating to see who takes advantage of what.
Well, the big issue too is they move, particularly when you get into, let's say, 3rd down, and there's 3rd downs in every game, obviously.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen moves around a lot. He's their motion movement guy. If they feel like they're going to get man coverage, and we'll see if the Eagles play much man, but if they feel like they're going to get man based on a down and distance situation, like let's say it's 3rd and 3, which is almost always a man situation for the defense.
Yeah.
Then they move them. There's stacks, there's picks, there's rubs, there's bunch.
Right.
The Chargers do all those kinds of things.
Plus, if he does go inside, matched up with Avante, I mean that's a big size advantage right there.
It's the size advantage, but I want Darius Slay. This is me. A lot of people look at this and say, I want Darius Slay on Keenan Allen because of the history. I would like Darius Slay if they get into a man situation to be on Mike Williams because you understand Keenan Allen is basically a possession receiver.
Yeah.
He's the best version of a possession receiver.
Sure.
So it's going to take a bunch of paper cuts in order to kill somebody. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to catch 8 balls for 88 yards, but it's very, very hard to consistently win games like that. it'll be harder. Mike
Explosives.
Williams can get the 7 catches for 140 yards,
Right.
130 yards, and that beats you. So I would like to see Darius Slay on Mike Williams.
Remind me to never go to Staples or Office Max with you, okay? I've never heard. Well, by the way, we were talking about how the defensive structure and the identity of keeping the explosive plays, and it's just so fascinating how they are worst in the league at quarterback completion percentage, and yet for their objective, they have allowed the 4th fewest pass plays of 20 or more yards, and only 5 teams have allowed fewer plays of 40 or more yards. So they've absolutely accomplished the objective of keeping everything in front.
Talking
They've
about the
just-
Eagles defense.
Yeah, Eagles defense. They've just kept them two in front and made it too easy at
A lot
times.
of paper
for-
cuts.
Yeah, a lot of paper
As
cuts.
Jason said, a lot of paper cuts.
The middle of the field is the issue. You talked about moving the safeties up. That's what I'm interested to see what they do today. Do they do that, and how do they slow down Mike Williams and Keenan Allen if they protect?
Here's what also fascinates me about what they might or might not do defensively today. Something they did last week that made a big difference, and you reported it in the pregame show early on, was that they were going to change how they were using linebackers. Alex Singleton had a different kind of role.
Yeah.
TJ Edwards, they took the dust off and said, hey, you're
Played
going to
well,
be our
didn't
nickel
he?
linebacker today along with Davion Taylor. But then
played
they
well.
used some, like at the end of the first half, I believe, it wound up being Singleton and
Dime, wasn't he?
Edwards. Singleton and Edwards were nickel, because
And
I believe that was
Blitz,
2 minutes.
They've been trying to figure all that out.
Yeah, but I
And
thought
they
Edwards made a
faced a
big
very
difference.
good receiving back today, too.
I was just
in
gonna. I
Austin
wanted to
Eckler.
bring that up. This
Right.
is where I'm concerned. We haven't even mentioned.
That's the next
Austin
segment.
Eckler,
I promise
right?
we'll get to it.
That's the one where you go, oh, there's Eagles linebackers that might be exposed this
Right,
game.
so that's a perfect segue. I mean, I feel like they found something with Edwards, at least being a better downhill against the run, against the Lions. Do they bring him back out today for as many snaps, or do the Chargers say, thank you, we're just going to pretend to run and pass it all over you? with him
Yeah,
out
see,
there?
TJ Edwards is that player that the coach doesn't want on the field because of his measurables.
Right.
They're going to look at him and say, he runs a 4.79, 4.8 40. He's not the biggest guy. He can't move well and cover guys. But he's instinctive. Everything that he lacks when it comes to athleticism, he's very, very instinctive. And he can see a play a lot faster than most of our guys. And he just doesn't have the athleticism, but it's a guy that you can't get off your team.
Right.
So he's a solid player, and he's better at the run and diagnosing plays.
Yep.
But
those Wisconsin guys know how to play defense.
he knows how to play defense, and it's good to some extent, unless you start, playing man coverage and you want to, have the running back, going wheel routes, So if we can stay away from that, we'll be great.
He made 13 tackles, I think 3 tackles
played
for a
well.
loss.
No,
I know it was the Lions.
Yeah,
but
He's
he
a
played
good
well.
player.
Yeah.
The big question is, see, the Eagles are up to this point in the season have not been a man coverage defense.
Right.
They've been a
Like
zone
more so than
coverage.
anyone.
They've been
Right.
a zone coverage defense. They've played, I believe, they played maybe the fewest snaps of cover one. They're near to the bottom for sure, in that area. And if you're going to play a lot of man coverage, you're going to have a tough time putting TJ Edwards out there, because it's tough for him to match up to good receiving backs.
Right.
But they don't play a lot of man, so you can play him.
Well, what can they do even if they
Swift
play a
was
lot
a
of
good
zone?
receiving back, though, right? He led the
Yeah.
so he was.
Even
Well,
if-
because they're playing on his own, though.
Yeah,
They didn't match
true.
him up to
Yeah.
Swift.
Yeah.
Right. So
100.
I'm saying, can Eckler, and just in general, can they expose TJ Edwards in the passing game, even if the Eagles are in a lot of zone today?
Well, what you might see, which the Chargers do a lot of, and they have with Eckler over the years, is detach Eckler from the formation. Okay, and that will give Herbert a lot of pre-snap information. Because if they detach him, okay, very often what happens with backs is they get detached to the boundary side of the formation. They end up being number 1 to the boundary, the twin side. There'll be 2 receivers there. It's usually the boundary X and then the back outside of them. And that will tell Herbert an awful lot about what the defense is going to look like.
Right.
And obviously the defense, if you're in zone, it has to stretch out, because now you're in an empty set. It has to stretch out. And that's where you get a lot of holes and voids and zones.
Our percentage of man coverage is going up drastically on third down, though.
Yes, on
right?
third down it has,
It's going up on third down. So if you're going to see Austin Eckler in man coverage versus TJ Edwards at any point, or Davion Taylor is going to be on third down.
Yep.
And that's something that they can take advantage of, and that may be the down and distance they try it.
How's Davion Taylor coming along?
This past game, I thought that he played well,
Yeah, I think
better
it's
than
better.
than the previous week, where he was a whole man outside of his zone.
Right.
zone.
I
So,
think
so I
he's-
thought he played better.
He's showing up a little bit now.
Yeah.
More so as in the run, or more so
well,
coverage?
I don't think The run game for him is going to be more, I think, about not physicality, because he just doesn't have that body type.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't try to be physical, but he's not necessarily going to start, moving people.
Sure.
But I think it's more about the way in which he plays the run.
Yeah.
As opposed to the fact that he's going to step up and take on people.
Sure,
and
like
move them.
navigating your way
Right,
around
right,
blocks
right.
and linemen coming at you. Is he doing better at that?
Yeah, I think he is.
And Jeff, we had been told the thing with him was eye discipline. That was the thing because he's such an inexperienced player.
Right.
So going forward here, how do opposing offensive coordinators call the game against him to try to get him out of position and where he's not sure where to go because he hasn't played a lot of football. We forget about that. He's a guy now that's being asked to be a starting NFL linebacker. They only generally play 2.
Right.
He's going to play a lot of snaps. And at some point, though, their big thing was a nickel. They wanted to be this great coverage linebacker.
But they're going to have to find out about it. That's why he's playing.
Exactly. That's why he's playing.
I was just about to ask that question.
Yeah.
Who is the Eagles' best linebacker? Who's the Eagles' linebacker?
It depends on what you're talking about.
exactly.
Like if you're
Who's the
looking,
most talented overall linebacker?
Davion's the most talented, but doesn't mean he's
Is
the best.
he?
He's the best linebacker.
I would say he's their most athletically gifted.
But that
doesn't
has
mean
to do
you're
with
talented.
talent. Yeah, that has to do with talent. All right.
If you wanted
And
to win a game and you could only have one linebacker,
that's a different subject. You said talent.
I separate athleticism
I
from
mean,
talent.
I don't think we're speaking out of school by saying that right now their linebacker core is not real good, and they're trying to find out who can be good. And Taylor is a third-round pick who's highly athletic, has great movement skills, better movement skills than any other linebacker on their roster.
Sure.
So they're trying to figure out what he is and how he can be used.
Right.
Can he be a 3-down linebacker? That's what they're trying to figure out. No one's going to sit here now and say, hey, next year he's Darius Leonard or Fred Warner or Bobby Wagner or Demario Davis. We're not saying that.
Right.
But that's what they're hoping he can work toward.
Yeah.
Be
So
that,
they're evaluating.
Yeah, they're
Absolutely.
evaluating him now, and that's why he's playing in what is essentially their base, okay? Because they essentially line up in a 5-2 front, okay? And he's being a stacked backer, okay? And he's going to continue to do that.
Right.
So they're going to see what he is.
Which he did not do it almost at all at Colorado, correct? Not stacked? He was more of a spread
He was
runner.
more of an overhang player in
right.
Colorado.
They just ran it. Yeah, so it's interesting because most teams have adopted Dallas's technique when it comes to running the ball versus Eagles. I seen one play last week where Fletcher Cox had a triple team. He didn't have a double team. He had triple team. The tight end stayed and got up to the second level, and they're triple teaming, they're double teaming our best 2 tackles, and linebackers have lanes, and they got to figure out how to navigate through it. And I think bringing that safety down in the box, which is that base cover 3, is helping our team out to be able to stop and mitigate it as best we can.
Yep.
We need aggressive people. We talk about Derwin James. The thing that sticks out about Derwin James, he's in a rush to get into the run gap.
Oh,
right. He's
yeah.
in a rush. He's in a hurry. He's playing down. He wants it to happen.
Yeah.
We need our players to have that mentality, second level and third level, in order for us
See,
to be
this is
good.
real tactical football, Jeff. But if you're going to play a 5-1 front, okay, which they like to play, they like to put Avery on the ball.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm talking about a nickel, but teams still run in nickel, okay?
Right.
And you're just going to have one stacked backer, then if teams are going to run, because teams will do this on first down, 1st and 10, they'll go nickel. That's they'll go 11 personnel. That's the NFL. You need another player, another stacked player. So you need someone to come down. Or they don't have to line up there, but you need another gap taken care of at the second level.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have an issue with cutbacks.
Right.
And
that's
we were
where
just
that's
talking
where
about
T.J.
James.
Edwards sort of
James
came
was great
in
at
there,
that.
right?
It's basically the same thing. Now, Staley's a 3-4 defense, but they've been playing a lot of 5 people on the line of
a
scrimmage,
5-2
which turns into the exact same thing the Eagles are doing. But Derwin James is in a hurry to get down.
Yeah.
Now, they're not at the greatest against the run, but they have an aggressive player to try to stop it the last few weeks, and that's what we need consistently.
Sure. Imagine if the Eagles had a linebacker that you talked about the way we talked about
And
Derwin
we-
James.
and
Those are the safeties.
But they use him
Or
as
safety, the way he
they
talked
use
about
him as a
Derwin
linebacker.
James.
But no, the question, we've said this all season, they're going to have a meeting, a personnel meeting where they say, okay, guys, this is not working with our guys. They're good backups, maybe low on starters. We need to change our philosophy a little bit at linebacker. They have to.
They absolutely have to. And safety, I think.
That will make you happy, I know that.
I mean, that's
Some
the way
guys
the
are
game has
built for
gone,
it,
has
some
it not?
guys.
I mean, Derwin James, Tyrann Mathieu, I mean, some of the best back-end players are your hybrid safeties who can do
A lot of
nickel,
things.
they can come
Sure.
in the box,
That's the way
they
the
can cover
league
the
is now,
puck.
right.
And the Eagles have just been like, nah.
But that's why
fair.
they have to reevaluate the way that they draft and the way that they believe defense is played now.
Yeah.
The way it was played 10, 15 years ago where you didn't need to spend money or invest draft picks, that's not the way most successful teams see it.
Right.
and they're going to have to take a look at themselves because I think we're being honest here. The Eagles have a bottom 5 linebacker corps. Some are actually overachievers.
Bottom 2.
Well,
bottom
okay.
1, maybe. Yeah.
But
yes.
bottom 5, I think we know that. And T.J. Edwards is starting to come on here. But again, is he a starting NFL quality linebacker?
Yeah.
We're certainly going to find out.
And listen, I'm talking a little sarcastically, right? Because the nature of a pregame show is to do the X's and O's. And when we talk about the X's and O's, we usually talk about who's playing well, who's not playing well. How does one attack the other's strengths and weaknesses and vice versa? And that always tends to lead to an argument of, well, this guy's not playing so good, this guy is. And what we don't always do, and we do on the podcast and you guys do it in other outlets, is, well, why is it that they have a bottom 5 this or a top 5 that? Did the organization do a good job of creating the atmosphere or a culture or addressing a position? And we know, because we talk about it on the podcast, that with safety, linebacker, and cornerback in the draft, the Eagles have done a very, very bad job for a long time about trying to find
corner,
the right type
they have
of
not
talent.
since, quite frankly, Lito Shepard and Sheldon Brown.
Right.
I mean,
Well, safety and
that's
linebacker,
20 years
they
for those
haven't
two
really
guys.
even addressed safety and
yeah,
linebacker.
Yeah.
That's my point.
It's
Well-
one thing to draft guys, and if they don't work out, then you could say, well, they didn't draft the right guys.
They did 10 years ago for Jaquan Jarrett. It didn't work out.
Right.
It
And that was not the right
But that was
guy.
10 years ago.
Right.
All right. I mean, Nate Allen was, 11 years ago?
He got hurt.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to be fair. Like, I don't want to sit here and kill Davion Taylor or kill T.J. Edwards for not being good enough. They are what they're supposed to be right now. And T.J. Edwards did give them a boost last week. We'll see if he was able to do. But when you're looking at the defense and wondering why quarterbacks complete 90% of their passes sometimes against the underbelly of the Eagles defense, and it's easy to say, well, this guy sucks and this guy sucks and that guy sucks. Well, what about your offseason planning?
Well, putting aside what you're just talking about with off-season planning, the tape tells you, okay, that's all you can right now. The tape tells you that they've not gotten really good play at linebacker or safety overall this year, and that's the middle of your defense.
Right. I will say Avonte Maddox, I think we can all agree, has been a nice move back to the slot for him this year. He's done a better job there. It seems like he's getting his
It's
footing
just like
back
we
in
thought
the
it
slot,
would be.
which
If
is
you
where
move
we
back
thought
to
it
the
would be.
slot. He was not an outside corner.
Right.
Like, I understand last year they had major issues at corner, but now they at least have one guy they know for the future. Now his contract's up though.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that 18 draft? Some of those guys have got extensions.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen a Sweat extension. We've seen a Mailata extension.
Yep.
And what we're waiting on is a Dallas Goedert and maybe an Avonte Maddox extension.
I'd be very surprised if Maddox is not here next year. They have to make sure he's back.
Well, they do. They are stockpiling slot corners. It makes you wonder.
They do.
It's a lot of money. So here's my thing. Avonte Maddox has played well, but like I said earlier this year, it's very, very hard to glean or to decide if he's playing well enough in order to pay him.
Right.
Because you pay guys based on if they can play man-to-man coverage.
Right.
You don't pay guys that are just great zone players.
It's more fungible
Right?
position if it's a zone
So
slot corner.
it's very, very hard to say, okay, this guy is, unless this guy start getting a lot of targets and man coverage and he's showing up every week,
right?
Then I'll be comfortable with it. But I'm not saying that he isn't. Right. I'm just saying that it's a hard tape to
They don't
judge.
have a history though of walking away from players who produce draft picks.
Right.
I mean, they've had so many problems at corner. I understand Max didn't play well last year. We all know that, but he's playing better this year. Mm-hmm. I'd have a hard time seeing them walk.
Who's that?
Maddox.
Yeah, okay.
But we all pointed this out. They have so many slot corners.
Yeah.
They cut Craig James, though. One of them is gone.
He's fast.
But they're going to have some decisions to make, and you only have one franchise tag. Not that he would get the tag. They have some guys like Goddard who will get the tag. He's not going anywhere.
I would be surprised. I could be dead wrong, but I would be surprised if they paid Maddox big dollar for his position. I'd be surprised.
No, but they'll pay whatever the top slot corners get.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong.
Well, the real quick, just because it doesn't come to my mind, like, give me some of the best slot corners in the league.
Well,
right
I don't think he's at the level of Kenny
that's
Moore
why I
or
know
the Colts.
Yeah.
What's the kid in the Saints? He's a good player. But he's not in there.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, he's not in there.
Okay, he's like a safety slot, right?
Well, he's a slot now.
Sure.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good player.
Got burned a little last week by Godwin, but a lot of people. And the Saints play a ton of man.
Right. We'd have to go look at what the going rate is for the top slot corners.
It's going to be between $6 and $8 million. This guy's a good football player. Plus, he can run. And remember, he was put in a tough position When we first started doing our shows, they put him at safety. Schwartz put him, it was against the Titans.
Thought he played well there.
Right. I mean, he's a guy that has
rookie,
shown versatility. We'll see what happens. Eagles have a lot of decisions to make on this roster.
All right, it's safe to say that when we talk about the Eagles defense and the linebackers, and I mean, everybody's going to kind of have an eye on Austin Eckler today. He's one of the multifaceted running backs in this league. He's averaging 60 yards a game on the ground, an additional 43 through the air. So he's one of about only 6 or 7 guys, running backs, that are averaging over 100 yards from scrimmage a game. So put your Joe Lombardi hat on. He's the offensive coordinator for the Chargers today. He's not a power runner, and that's
Eckler?
how teams right.
No.
Eckler.
They come up with the other 2 guys. Yes.
So how do you kind of attack the Eagles, knowing that they've been vulnerable up the middle to power runners, but then they've also teams have been able to throw to their pass-catching running backs against the Eagles?
Yeah, I would get Eckler involved. I know it didn't happen last week, but I still am going to. If I'm Lombardi, and based on the usage this week, he clearly will get him the football. Eckler will get 10, 11 carries.
The number 2 back will be Roundtree, the rookie from.
They've been one of them's out.
Kelly.
Right. It's the
Joshua
2 of them.
Kelly.
They've been trying week by week to
Yeah.
get someone to take that number 2 role.
Right.
But Staley had the great quote. Everyone's seen it. There's a certain physicality that you need to have, and that's why even if they run for 2 yards a carry, these bigger backs are going to come in and they're going to carry the football. Eckler's also smaller.
Yeah.
They kind of know what he is, but he's explosive. Greg talked about it. They line him up, outside they flank him out. They'll do that. And the other thing is you're going to see passes inside. The Eagles give up production inside. Gannon has the safeties down deep. Will he drop him, as you said? Will he drop him in the box today?
Right.
That is the personal matchup. I'm very interested to see Joe Lombardi versus Gannon. Who wins?
What has Joe Lombardi done with this Chargers offense that was different than what Shane Steichen did with it?
Well, that's a hard question.
Oh, I love the dramatic
Mike Williams' usage before these 2 weeks, very high.
I know I've asked a good one when Greg goes like this.
Yeah, no, I can't remember, because I was very focused last year, and again, it was last year on watching Herbert.
Right.
But you'll see, Lombardi comes from the Saints, so you see a lot of motion. They play with a fullback, snaps too. Because I remember being out there, and the day I was out there, they practiced a ton with the fullback. So they will line up in base personnel. I don't know. Do you have a better answer? I'm not sure exactly.
Gabe Neighbors, my man.
Yeah, Gabe Neighbors. I don't have a better answer.
Yeah, I don't remember all the specifics
I
of
was just
last
curious.
year.
Yeah.
I mean, Williams has become, because this year Williams is a better player than he's been, he can be a real problem as the X. And they throw a lot of short balls. See, the one thing the Eagles have to be very conscious of is if you line up, in let's say base cover 3, there are certain routes that are just timing routes that are automatically there. And they like to throw. Like they'll throw a lot of slant, flat stuff because that always works to the short side of the field against cover 3, particularly if you got a big body. That's why you mentioned Darius Slay. Will he be on him? Well, they try to press Williams a little bit just to disrupt the timing.
Right.
There's little things like that you have to do because Herbert really is at his best when he plays with a refined sense of timing and rhythm. Despite his big arm, he can certainly make downfield throws.
Sure.
But they're much more of a timing, rhythm-based team under Lombardi.
Right.
Okay, that's the thing that stands out to me.
Okay.
Because as I said, Herbert is almost somewhat mechanical at times.
Right.
But in a good way, because he'll hit that back foot and the ball comes out.
Right.
And if you're playing zone and you're just playing base zone, they'll know where the voids are.
If you're playing zone, where's Eckler going to hurt them?
If you're playing zone, just check downs, but mainly running the ball. It's not going to be like I said, Eckler is going to be, I said this earlier, third down.
Right.
Those are the situations where our guys can be vulnerable. When you have a young Davion Taylor, you have TJ Edwards. Those are the things that's the place where we can be hurt. Now, can we be hurt if we go out and cover 2, cover 4, and leave a check down that a guy is constantly getting 10 yards? Yes, we can be hurt that way. And we have in the past where running backs have had small, catches and it turns into 10, 15 yards. So it can happen that way, but I don't think that's what the new Eagles style as of this last game is going to give them.
I'm just going to add this. The last game where the Chargers got the ball downfield was Week 5. In that crazy game, the highest scoring game of the season, 89 points. Yeah, against the Browns, where Williams shot play after shot play, hit a 72-yard touchdown. Sure. But they haven't really been able to do that. Their pass protection, and we've talked about that right side, that is where the Chargers will make their money. If they protect, and they've been keeping Jared Cook in, that's why he's not catching the ball a lot. But if they protect, I would think they'll take their shots.
What is the league book on Joe Lombardi?
So what happened in Detroit was, remember he got fired in his first year. the word I had gotten from a very good Lions source is very stubborn. Not so much here. He's done a very good job of managing Herbert, and they're doing well together. But it just, no one really took well to his coaching because this is his first time being an OC. He came in with a system, his Sean Payton system. It just didn't work, and that staff actually got fired in the season, and he along with it. But he's done a really good job. I know the Chargers are very happy with him, and Herbert's taken to him. Herbert saved those 2 games, one last week, and the Ravens game on the road. They had that emotional game before that. He just didn't play well, but he's done a good job.
Awesome. All right. Hey, coaches being stubborn? Never heard that one before.
But you got to have a relationship with your quarterback where they see eye to eye. You don't have to love it, but you got to see eye to eye.
Absolutely. You know who we see eye to eye with? Our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. Got to check them out. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That is their motto, so make sure you're checking them out on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation and on their website, PHLSportsNation.com. We've got a few more minutes before we wrap this up, and Adam and I wanted to do something a little differently, move away from the X's and O's, because we're kind of at the halfway point of the year, even though it's now 17 games, so it's not officially, but we kind of I wanted to get a thought from each of you on over the second half of the year. One thing that, if you could change or you think would change, would make this team different in a good way. One thing that would really improve the team. Jay, if I said to you, what's one thing you'd like to see from the
10
Eagles?
things, but yeah, give us
I know
one.
there's a lot.
Look,
I know,
man,
we'll take one.
We're 3 and 5.
It's not like Christmas where you got Santa's list. You got to pick one.
One thing is for a 5-4 team, or a 4-3 team. That's like one thing,
One thing for a 5-4 team could be the difference this year of making the playoffs and not
right.
because it's
but that's what I'm
easy.
saying. But we're not 5-4. We're 3. We're not 5-3.
They have a chance at a wild card.
True.
I'm not saying we're not, but I'm saying there's multiple things.
I know.
Sure.
All right, so
It could be big
I would say big. Can I get 2 things?
I'll give you 2.
Please.
Can I get 2 things?
You're Jason
All right,
Avant, so I'll give you 2.
so I'll say these 2 things, but there's still a lot of things. But number 1, be more under the center, running the ball focus.
Okay.
Everything else happens after that.
So build off
Offensively.
that. Make that foundational and build off.
Make that your priority.
Okay.
2, more aggressive on defensive play calling.
Okay.
Blitz more, play more man coverage. I think that's the start.
Okay.
And that's pretty much that's simple. But there's a lot of things. There's personnel problems. There's a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Are you real quick on that? Jim Schwartz was asked to blitz more, right? And he would blitz, and he would get torn apart. And the numbers against his blitz were very, very bad.
Well, let me tell you why. Jim Schwartz had more injuries on his side of the ball.
Yeah, he did.
And during his time, especially at the cornerback position, safety position, he had guys at times that shouldn't have been in the NFL, and they're not in the NFL right now.
Right.
He was playing with less. This defensive coordinator is playing with more than Jim Schwartz had, and he was able to do a bunch with the little that he had. So I think this is a different situation.
Who was the corner that Jim Schwartz had to play with last year? He was Michael Jacquet.
Michael Jacquet
Michael Jacquet was an outside corner, and I think Cravon
Sullivan.
LeBlanc was an outside.
We have another one. Who else we have?
Well, Sullivan was with the Packers.
Josh Hawkins.
Sullivan.
Remember
We
Josh
have
Hawkins?
Yeah,
that was a good
last year.
Sullivan
No,
is
it's
the
like
Packers.
the-
Yeah,
The fact that we
He's
had,
been the
used to
slot
be with
corner
the
for
Eagles,
2
yeah.
years
It was-
and
it was-
actually is a good slot
Yeah.
corner.
He is a good slot, but
Yeah.
Is Roby Coleman even playing with anybody this year?
He was on someone's practice squad. You
Yeah.
remember they were playing? Were they
it the
not
Lions?
playing?
It was just somebody with the Raiders.
Kevon Seymour was here.
Right.
Kevon Seymour,
Weren't
exactly.
they
Seymour,
playing
Trey
Roby
Sullivan.
Coleman, right?
I think he's actually with the
In the
Lions.
back end.
Greg, weren't they playing Nicole Roby Coleman on the outside last year? a
They
little
had
bit?
to
Yeah.
on occasion.
They had nobody else.
They had
And
nobody else.
And he
Can't
he
have
just
that.
can't run.
So you feel that the Eagles, personnel-wise, can blitz more and not suffer major ramifications? Like you're okay with some of the one-on-one matchups?
Yeah, because
Okay.
you have Steven Nelson, who's solid. He's
Right.
not a world beater, but you have Darius Slay. You guys are alluding to paying Avonte Maddox. Hey, listen, you got to blitz him so you can cover man-to-man so we can see.
All right.
So you have if you have the guys that you pay money for a second corner, you got a Pro Bowl style Pro Bowl corner, and you got a young rising corner. Yeah, play more.
All right. Greg?
I mean,
You're perfect. You watch the tape every week.
Yeah,
What would you
but-
like to see?
But I would like to see basically what Jason said, because I think to me, and I started talking about this early in the season, about them putting Jalen Hurts under center.
Right.
Because, and I even made the comparison, because I almost thought there was a valid comparison to some degree to be made with Jalen Hurts coming out of Oklahoma and Dak Prescott coming out of Mississippi State. Because Dak Prescott, as far as scouts and evaluators were concerned, had some of the same concerns that Jalen Hurts had coming out of Oklahoma. And Dak Prescott went to a team that had a really good run game, a solid defense, and they put him under center, and that's how they taught him how to play in the NFL. And I think that's really important. I understand why the Eagles did what they did. Okay, they thought they were playing to Jalen Hurts' strengths. And it hasn't worked out to this point. Maybe there's many reasons for that. But I think not solely to win today, but if you want Jalen Hurts to be your quarterback, you have to find out if he can line up under center and execute that kind of offense.
Sure.
And I think we need to see that. And it's not just for the run game and being physical, although, by the way, I think that fits their offensive line better, too.
Yes.
So that's the other factor. It's not just one player. It
Well,
rarely ever is one player.
Right.
But I think that it would make their entire offense ultimately be better.
Awesome. All right. Jason took yours since he did too. So we're going to go to our player. No, I'm just kidding. What do you want?
Well, Jeff and I, for those of you going to the game today, because you've watched this 2-hour show, Jeff and I did about a 35-minute show on Friday, right?
Yeah.
Where we actually talked about this, some of what we saw in the first half and what we'd like to see in the second half. But Jason had the great point earlier about helping Hurts out, give him a run game. I think we all know that he needs a run game. But I want to go back to my point earlier. I've said this almost every week. Better usage of offensive personnel. They have so much speed here. Use it. We're not talking 9 rounds. Whether it's crossers, screens, orbit motion, whatever it is, and we saw some of that last week with Rager. Use the speed that you were being given by the personnel staff better, and the offense will be better for it.
And some of that comes out of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Because the routes you can run under center will utilize, because you tend to get a lot more crossers.
Got you.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
All right, good. We're going to get into our players of the games and our score prediction. Of course, if you want to get the advantage over your sportsbook, download BetQL. It's the only app you'll need to make the smartest bet you can make. They've got the best bet computer model. Scans over 350,000 unique bets a year to give you that best bet recommendation. It tells you why you should make the bet. Their model covers spreads, over-unders, player prop bets. And if you don't want to use the model, if you like to do the research yourself, BetQL's got the necessary tools for all of your research needs. They've got sharp data, line movement, team summaries, lineup and injury, breaking news, even a leaderboards to track your success. So head to the App Store or Google Play Store now. Download BetQL. You can also go to try.betql.co/ITB. Enter the promo code ITB at checkout to get 25% off their subscription offerings. And if you check out their sportsbook offers page, if you live in one of the eligible states, you can claim free offers upon signing up at one of the sportsbooks listed. So don't miss out on the chance to beat your sportsbook this fall season using BetQL. Jason, who's going to be the player of the game today?
I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts.
Oh.
They're last in rush defense, and they have a million corners out. So I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts.
All right, big game for Jalen Hurts. Greg, who's the player of the game?
I think I'm going to go with Justin Herbert because I think the Chargers are.
You hold on a second. You said Jalen. You're all right.
Just making
sure you guys are going to brawl after the. I just want to make sure you're on the same page.
I got too much reverence.
No, I think that I think they've not played real well on offense the last couple of weeks. I think that they'll get back on track against, a defense that for the most part, and we'll see because we don't know what the Eagles defense will do, but for the most part has not really prevented offenses from executing the way they'd like to execute.
Gotcha. Adam, player of the game will be?
I'm going to go with the guy we mentioned earlier. It's Derwin James, who will be everywhere today because they're down at corner. They're going to have to use him as a blitzer and a cover guy, maybe against Scott. I just think he's going to have a great game today. Mm-hmm. What should be a fascinating game, maybe one of the most of the season.
By the way, just a quick aside, Derwin James has matched up to wide receivers this year. So
that too.
Yes.
Wow.
So don't count on.
Are you talking about outside receivers or slot receivers?
Slot receivers.
Okay.
Yeah. Still, that's still very impressive.
Don't discount him matching up to a receiver in the slot.
There you go. All right, I am going with Austin Eckler as the player of the game today. I just think they're going to feed him the ball early and often against this Eagles defense that has been vulnerable to pass-catching running backs, and he's one of the best ones. So let's get into this. Now, the line has moved. The line's been moving all week long.
When did it open?
It was at 2.5, and the last we checked, I believe it was 1, right? It's down to 1. The Eagles are – oh, no, was it 1.5? 1.5 that the Eagles are underdogs by. So they had a nice 1-week stint as being the favorites last week, but now they're back to being the underdogs. Remember, Sundays are made for football at Rivers Casino in Philadelphia. Every Sunday from now to the end of the season, you can enjoy $7 food specials at Jack's Bar and Grill, half-price gourmet burgers at Hugo's Chop House, drink specials and more. And not only that, but when the Birds score, you score if you're actively planning with your Rush Rewards card in their Bird's Nest pit in front of the sportsbook. Remember, you can be a winner at Rivers Casino Philadelphia, where Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get these picks going. We'll start with you, Jason. Who's going to win today?
I got the Birds, 24-23. Got the Birds.
By one, all right.
Getting one. Somehow, some way. Chargers playing bad.
Well, it makes sense. You got
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts as the player of the game.
Coming across the country again.
All right, there you go. Greg, what do you
I
got
know I
today?
picked the Chargers. I can't remember my score.
You picked them to win 27-20. Do you stand by that?
I do stand by that.
All right, big game for Justin Herbert.
Because, you know,
your
when I
player of
flipped the
game.
coin on Friday, I stand by my coin flip.
You call it in the air?
I'm just going to say, we've had a few people not stand by their initial
Yes.
pick last
Hey,
week,
listen.
and now this week.
Yes.
We have another
Listen.
one.
But here's the thing, though. I put it in the rundown last
You
night.
did put it in the rundown.
Once
so.
I saw who was out, although I did say before, I'm not sure if I trust this coaching staff. I just believe that the matchups are there for the Eagles' offense to be had, and they will. Though I said Derwin James will be all over it, he will. I do believe that the Eagles will find a way to win this game, 24-20. At the link, their first home win this season.
I love that he picks Derwin James as the player of the
I
game,
know.
but he picks the Eagles to win. That's good. That's playing both sides of the fence
Yeah,
like a true
No, but he can
analyst.
make it. He can make
could.
plays. He'll
He
be all over
absolutely
it today.
could. I do think the Chargers will win. I think it'll be close. I'm kind of with the spread here. I think the Chargers are going to win 24-23, and we may finally have, I don't believe in moral victories, but we may finally say, hey, you know what, the Eagles lost, but they showed up on certain sides of the football. They just didn't have enough to win. We'll see. That'll be part of our discussion on the next Inside the Birds podcast, which will drop 6 a.m. on Monday. Of course, the Q&A show will be out Thursday at 6 a.m. also with Quentin Mikell and Jason Avant. And remember, before you put down any money, do it with the Bet Rivers app. Bet on the Eagles, against the Eagles, whatever you want to do. Use the Bet Rivers app or come down to here to Rivers Casino in Philadelphia. That's going to be it for the show. Big thanks to Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, Sky Motor Cars, BetQL. Happy birthday again to James Hayden of Public Square Media and our good friend Zach James doing a great job at Rebel Hill. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a great time. Enjoy your 1 o'clock football. See you again next week.